The knife plunged toward her heart, and Adrian DeLuca, the man who'd sworn never to bleed for anyone, threw himself between the blade and the woman carrying his child. For 3 years, his body had felt nothing, no desire, no fire, until her. Lena Carter, the shy waitress who shattered every wall he'd built, who walked away believing she was nothing but his dirty secret. Now, as his blood spilled onto cold pavement and her terrified eyes met his, Adrian finally understood the cruelest truth. The most dangerous man in Las Vegas had fallen completely, irrevocably in love. If you're hooked, stay until the end. Drop a like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The midnight collision stretched along the Vegas Strip like a crown jewel of sin and power, its obsidian facade reflecting neon lights that painted the night in shades of crimson and gold. Inside, money flowed as freely as champagne, and secrets cost more than diamonds. Outside in the shadowed alley behind the club's exclusive VIP entrance, Adrian DeLuca stood alone, the weight of his empire pressing against his shoulders like a physical thing. He lifted a hand-rolled cigarette to his lips, the ember flaring orange in the darkness. Smoke curled into the desert air as he exhaled slowly, deliberately, the way he did everything. Control was his religion, discipline, his armor. At 34, Adrian ruled the Las Vegas underworld with calculated precision, every deal negotiated, every threat neutralized, every moment of his life orchestrated like the moves on a chessboard. Everything except the hollow ache that had consumed him for 3 years. His phone buzzed. Adrian glanced at the screen. Another message from his underboss, Marco, confirming tonight's shipment had cleared the port without incident. He typed a curt reply and pocketed the device, his jaw tightening as he took another drag. 3 years since the accident that should have killed him. 3 years since he'd woken in a private hospital with his body intact but fundamentally changed. The doctors called it psychological trauma. Temporary. It'll pass, they'd promised. They were wrong. No woman had stirred his blood since that night. Not the models who draped themselves across his table at the club. Not the socialites his mother paraded before him at charity galas. Not even Elena Volkov, the stunning daughter of his father's oldest ally, whom everyone expected him to marry. Adrian had tested himself repeatedly, clinically, the way one might check a broken watch. Beautiful women. Willing women. Women who wanted nothing from him except the privilege of warming his bed. His mind acknowledged their appeal. His body remained utterly, maddeningly indifferent. So he'd stopped trying, stopped pretending, embraced the cold numbness as just another price of power. The alley door burst open, slamming against brick with a sharp crack that shattered his thoughts. "I said no!" A woman's voice rang out, breathless, desperate, defiant. Adrian's eyes narrowed as a figure stumbled into the alley, heels scraping against asphalt as she twisted away from the man following her. Even in the dim light, Adrian could see the way her hands shook, the way her dark hair fell across her face like a protective curtain. "Come on, baby, don't be like that." The man, some hedge fund asshole Adrian vaguely recognized from the VIP lounge, grabbed her wrist, yanking her back. "You've been serving drinks all night with that sweet smile. Least you can do is give me 10 minutes of your time." The woman wrenched her arm free, nearly losing her balance. "I'm not interested. Please just leave me alone." "You work at my club, sweetheart. I'm a member here. You think you can just—" The lady said no. Adrian's voice cut through the night like a blade, low and utterly calm. The hedge fund prick spun around, his cocky smile faltering when he recognized who'd spoken. "Mr. DeLuca, you were just leaving." Adrian took a single step forward, cigarette still balanced between his fingers. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. Men who understood power knew that real danger whispered instead of shouted. "And your membership?" "Revoked. Effective immediately." Color drained from the man's face. "Sir, I didn't mean any disrespect. Marco will escort you out. If you ever set foot in any establishment I own again, you'll discover exactly how disrespectful I find men who ignore a woman's refusal." Adrian's dark eyes held the promise of violence so casual, so certain, that the hedge fund asshole actually stumbled backward. "Yes, sir. Of course. My apologies." He practically fled toward the club's side entrance, his expensive shoes slapping against pavement. Silence settled over the alley like snow. Adrian turned his attention to the woman still pressed against the brick wall, her chest rising and falling rapidly beneath her simple black uniform shirt. She stared at him with wide eyes, not the calculated interest he was used to seeing in women's faces, but genuine shock mixed with something that looked dangerously close to fear. Not fear of him, he realized. Fear of what had almost happened. "Thank you," she managed, her voice smaller now, threaded with the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying too much weight for too long. Thank you." Adrian studied her properly for the first time. Mid-20s, he guessed. Pretty in an understated way. Delicate features, pale skin that suggested she didn't see much sun, eyes that reflected the alley's dim lighting like dark water. Everything about her screamed invisible, the kind of woman people looked past, looked through, forgot the moment she left a room. Except Adrian couldn't look away. "You work here." His voice came out rougher than he intended. She nodded, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with trembling fingers. "Just started last week. Cocktail waitress. I'm sorry if I caused any trouble. He was a VIP, and I know the tips are better when we're friendly, but he wouldn't—" She cut herself off, wrapping her arms around her middle like she could physically hold herself together. "What's your name?" "Lena. Lena Carter." She met his eyes for barely a second before her gaze skittered away. "I should get back inside. My shift isn't over and I can't afford to." "You're shaking." The observation came out clinical, detached. Adrian took a final drag of his cigarette and crushed it beneath his Italian leather shoe. "When does your shift end?" 2 a.m., but really I'm fine. I just need— It's 1:45. Adrian checked his watch, a Patek Philippe that cost more than most people's cars. "Wait 15 minutes. I'll have Marco arrange a car to take you home." Lena's eyes widened. "That's not necessary. I take the bus." At 2 in the morning, alone, something sharp edged into his tone. "After what just happened?" She flinched, and Adrian forced himself to soften his voice, a skill he'd almost forgotten he possessed. "It's late. The streets aren't safe. Consider it an apology for my club allowing that situation to occur in the first place." He pulled out his phone, already typing a message to Marco. "Where do you live?" Lena hesitated, her fingers twisting together. For a long moment, Adrian thought she might refuse, might choose the bus and its dangers over accepting help from a stranger, even a stranger who owned the club where she worked. "Henderson," she finally whispered. "The apartment's near Valley View. Building C." Adrian knew the area, knew it was a 40-minute bus ride from the Strip, through neighborhoods that got rougher with every mile. Knew the apartments she referenced were the kind with broken security gates and flickering hallway lights, cheap enough for people barely scraping by, expensive enough to keep them trapped. He finished his message and pocketed the phone. "Done. A driver will meet you at the employee entrance in 20 minutes. "I don't know how to thank you, Mr. She stopped, realization dawning across her features. "You're the owner of the club, of everything." Adrian. The name left his mouth before he could question why he was offering it. He never introduced himself by first name to employees. Kept that wall firmly in place. "Adrian," Lena repeated, testing the syllables like they might burn her tongue. "Thank you, really. I'll pay you back for the ride somehow." "That won't be necessary." He turned toward the door, already regretting the impulse that had made him linger this long. He had security staff to handle situations like this, managers whose job it was to ensure employee safety. He should have delegated and walked away the moment that asshole ran off. But his hand was on the door handle when he heard it, a soft, broken sound that barely qualified as a laugh. "I really can't afford to lose this job," Lena said, more to herself than to him. "Not after everything. I just need to last 3 months. 3 months to save enough for first, last, and deposit somewhere new, somewhere he can't find me." Adrian went still. "He?" The question emerged harder than he meant it to, and Lena's expression shuddered immediately. "Nothing. Nobody. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said, I'm really tired and I'm babbling, and you've already been so kind. Someone is looking for you." Adrian stated it as fact, not question. He'd spent too many years reading people, identifying threats, cataloging vulnerabilities. Her fear had layers he hadn't initially noticed. "Someone you're afraid of." Lena's throat worked as she swallowed. "It's complicated." "Complicated how?" "The kind of complicated that's none of your business, Mr. DeLuca." Steel entered her voice, quiet steel, but steel nonetheless. "I appreciate your help tonight. Truly. But my personal life is my own problem." There it was again. that flash of strength wrapped in softness. Most people cowered when Adrian pressed them. This woman stood her ground despite the exhaustion written in every line of her body. Something shifted in his chest. Not attraction. He'd forgotten what that felt like. But interest, perhaps. Curiosity about what could make a woman this fragile-seeming also this stubborn. Fair enough. Adrian pulled open the door, holding it for her. But if Complicated shows up at my club looking for you, it becomes my business. Understood? Lena nodded slowly, slipping past him into the harsh fluorescent lighting of the club's back hallway. She paused just inside, turning back to look at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Why are you being so nice to me? The question caught him off guard. Adrian studied her face. The genuine confusion there, the wariness of someone unaccustomed to kindness without strings attached. Because that man put his hands on you in a business I own, Adrian said carefully. That reflects poorly on my establishment. I'm simply correcting the problem. It was a lie, or at least not the whole truth. But Lena seemed to accept it, nodding once before she walked away, her footsteps echoing down the corridor until she disappeared around a corner. Adrian stood in the doorway for longer than necessary, the desert wind cooling the sweat on his neck. His phone buzzed again. Marco, confirming the car was arranged. He should go back to his office, pour himself 2 fingers of scotch, and review tomorrow's meeting notes. Forget about tired waitresses with secrets in their eyes and steel in their spines. Instead, he found himself texting Marco a second message. Pull the employee file for Lena Carter, background check, full report on my desk by morning. Then, because he was Adrian DeLuca and he always covered his bases, he added, and increased security on all club entrances. Anyone asks about her, I want to know immediately. The apartment building looked worse than Adrian remembered. He sat in his blacked-out Escalade across the street at 2:30 in the morning, watching through tinted windows as Lena climbed out of the sedan he'd arranged. She thanked the driver, actually thanked him, like riding in a clean car with working air conditioning was some kind of gift, and hurried toward Building C's entrance. Adrian told himself he was simply ensuring his employee arrived safely, that it was good business practice to verify the security measures he'd put in place were effective. He told himself he'd leave as soon as she disappeared inside. But he watched her fumble with the broken security gate, saw the way she glanced over her shoulder twice before finally getting it open, saw the single light flickering in the third-floor hallway as she climbed stairs Adrian knew would be littered with cigarette butts and worse. His jaw tightened. Marco's preliminary report had arrived an hour ago, painting a picture Adrian found difficult to reconcile with the woman he'd met in the alley. Lena Marie Carter, 24 years old, bachelor's degree in English literature from UNLV. Graduated summa cum laude 3 years ago. No criminal record. No outstanding warrants. Previous employment? Substitute teacher, bookstore clerk, freelance editor. Current employment. Midnight collision, 1 week. Convenience store, 6 months. 2 cleaning service jobs, sporadic. Current residence, Henderson, Building C, apartment 312. Rent, 6 months overdue. Eviction notice pending. Personal details. Mother deceased, cancer, 5 years ago. Father deceased, heart attack 2 years ago. Legal guardian until age 18, Robert Hayes, stepfather. Hayes currently serving 18 months for assault and battery, due for release in 30 days. Financial status, $247 in checking account, $12,000 in student loan debt, no credit cards, no assets. Adrian's fingers had tightened on the paper at that last part. Robert Hayes. The complicated she didn't want to discuss. The deeper background Marco's team was running would provide more details. It always did. But Adrian already knew enough to understand why Lena Carter worked herself to exhaustion across multiple jobs. Why she counted down months until she could disappear. Why she looked over her shoulder with the wariness of prey who knew predators by scent. She was running out of time and money in equal measure, and the man she feared was coming home soon. Adrian's phone lit up with a message from his mother. Dinner Sunday, 6 p.m. Elena will be joining us. Please don't be late this time. He deleted it without responding. The light in apartment 312 flickered on, a yellow glow behind thin curtains. Adrian watched Lena's silhouette move across the window, probably shedding her work uniform, probably collapsing into bed with the bone-deep exhaustion he'd seen in her eyes. 3 months, she'd said. 3 months to save enough to disappear. Adrian pulled up Marco's contact and typed, tomorrow morning. Need a property manager who specializes in discreet relocations. Also, I want security on Hayes when he's released. 24-hour surveillance. If he goes anywhere near Henderson, I want to know. Marco's reply came instantly. On it. Anything else? Adrian stared at the lit window, at the shadow of a woman who didn't know she'd captured the attention of the most dangerous man in Las Vegas. Not yet, he typed, but keep Carter's file updated, daily. He signaled his driver and the Escalade pulled away from the curb, leaving Henderson's broken streetlights and desperate dreams behind. Lena didn't see Adrian DeLuca for 5 days. She told herself it was relief. The owner of the Midnight Collision had better things to do than check on exhausted cocktail waitresses he'd rescued from grabby customers. That moment in the alley had been an aberration. Powerful men didn't involve themselves in the problems of invisible women. Except she couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at her. Not with the leering assessment she'd grown accustomed to from club patrons. Not with pity or dismissal, but with an intensity that made her feel seen in a way that was both terrifying and oddly exhilarating. Table 12 needs another round. Marcus, the floor manager, appeared at her shoulder with a tray. And the gentleman at the bar asked specifically for you. Lena's stomach dropped. Which gentleman? Tall, dark suit, looks like money. Marcus grinned. Maybe you made an impression. She forced herself to turn toward the bar, half expecting to see Robert's face. Impossible. He was still in prison. She'd checked yesterday. Or worse, one of his friends come to deliver a message. Instead, she found a stranger. Handsome in a generic way, mid-40s, gold wedding ring catching the light as he gestured her over. There you are, he said, smile too wide, eyes tracking her body in a way that made her skin crawl. Been waiting for the pretty one to come back around. What's your name, sweetheart? Lena. She kept her voice professional, distant. What can I get you? How about your phone number? He leaned forward, breath heavy with scotch. Come on, baby, don't be shy. I tip very well for special attention. Lena's hands tightened on her serving tray. This was her 4th proposition tonight, her 2nd this week from this particular asshole. She'd deflected 3 previous attempts, but he kept coming back, kept pushing. I'm flattered, but I'm just here to serve drinks. She tried to step back. If you'd like to order... His hand shot out, fingers closing around her wrist. I'm ordering your time, sweetheart. Name your price. Let go. Fear spiked through her chest, sharp and familiar. Please. Playing hard to get? That's cute. But we both know girls like you need the money. Is there a problem? The voice was arctic. Lena's head snapped up to find Adrian DeLuca standing 3 feet away, hands in the pockets of a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her yearly salary. His dark eyes fixed on the man's hand gripping her wrist with an expression that promised violence. The drunk released her immediately, hands raising in surrender. Mr. DeLuca, I was just leaving. Adrian didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. Permanently. Sir, I didn't mean... Security will collect your membership card at the door. Adrian's gaze never wavered. You have 60 seconds to exit the building. After that, I stop being polite. The man fled. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the club's pulsing music. Lena rubbed her wrist, fighting the tremor in her hands. Around them, other patrons had noticed the exchange, whispers spreading like wildfire. Thank you, she managed. Again. Adrian's jaw tightened. My office. Now. It wasn't a request. Lena followed him through the club, acutely aware of the curious eyes tracking their progress. Adrian moved through the crowd like a shark through shallow water, people partying instinctively, sensing danger, even if they couldn't articulate its source. His office occupied the top floor, all glass and steel, with a view of the strip that stole her breath. Adrian closed the door behind them, the club's noise immediately muted to a distant pulse. Sit. He gestured to one of the leather chairs facing his desk. Lena perched on the edge, her back rigid. If this is about what just happened, I didn't encourage... This is about you working yourself to death. Adrian moved to the bar cart, pouring amber liquid into 2 glasses. He set one in front of her. Drink. She stared at the scotch. I'm still on shift. Your shift just ended. He settled into the chair across from her, his own glass untouched. I've been reviewing the schedule. You're working 6 days a week here, plus 2 other jobs. When exactly do you sleep, Lena? Heat crawled up her neck. How do you... Shh. I know everything that happens in my businesses. His eyes held hers, unyielding, including when my employees are putting themselves at risk. I'm fine. You're exhausted. You nearly collapsed serving drinks yesterday. Don't think I didn't notice. And tonight makes the 5th time in a week that someone has harassed you on my floor. It's part of the job. No. The word cracked like a whip. It's not. And it won't be. Not anymore. Lena's breath caught. What does that mean? Adrian leaned forward, elbows on his knees, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made her head spin. It means I'm offering you a different position, better hours, better pay, considerably better working conditions. Every instinct screamed trap. Men like Adrian DeLuca didn't offer generous arrangements without expectations. What kind of position? My estate manager just quit. Family emergency in Italy. I need someone to run the household, coordinate staff, manage maintenance, handle scheduling. It's demanding work, but it would be 1 job instead of 3. Salary, benefits, and living quarters included. Living quarters, meaning she'd be in his house, alone with him. Why me? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. You could hire anyone, someone with actual experience managing estates. I need someone I can trust. Adrian's eyes searched her face. Someone who isn't trying to leverage access to my home for gossip or advantage. Someone who needs the work enough to take it seriously. Translation: someone desperate enough not to ask questions. And what would you expect in return? The question tasted bitter. Besides household management, understanding flickered across Adrian's features. You think this is some kind of proposition, isn't it? Lena forced herself to hold his gaze. Powerful men don't offer desperate women generous arrangements out of kindness, Mr. DeLuca. They do it because they want something. You're right. Adrian's honesty caught her off guard. I do want something. I want my house run efficiently. I want to stop worrying that you're going to pass out from exhaustion or get assaulted by another drunk asshole who thinks your smile is an invitation. He paused. And I want you somewhere safe when Robert Hayes gets out of prison in 23 days. Ice flooded Lena's veins. How do you... I told you, I know everything. Adrian's voice gentled fractionally, including that your stepfather is violent, that you're counting down days until you can disappear, that you're drowning in debt and running out of options. Tears burned behind Lena's eyes. She blinked them back furiously. You investigated me. I protect my investments, my businesses, my people. He said it simply, like stalking his employees was perfectly reasonable. You work for me now, Lena. That makes you my responsibility. I'm not your anything. But her voice shook, betraying the lie. She was exactly what he said, drowning, desperate, running out of time. Adrian stood, moving to the window with his hands in his pockets. His reflection in the glass looked carved from stone, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The estate position is real. Legitimate work for legitimate pay. You'd have your own quarters, a full apartment, completely separate from mine. Your responsibilities would be clearly defined in a contract my lawyers will draft. No expectations beyond professional duties. He turned to face her. And when Hayes comes looking for you, and he will, he'll find nothing. Because Lena Carter, cocktail waitress, will have disappeared. The woman living at the DeLuca estate will have a different name, different documentation, different life entirely. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. You're offering me witness protection. I'm offering you a job and a fresh start. What you do with it is your choice. Adrian's dark eyes held hers. But the offer expires when you walk out that door. Accept now or handle Hayes on your own in 3 weeks. It was manipulation. Calculated and cold, and undoubtedly meant to corner her into accepting. It was also her only real option. What about references? She whispered. Background checks? I don't have estate management experience. You have a degree in English literature, which means you can write, research, and think critically. You've worked retail and service jobs, which means you understand customer relations and scheduling. You're organized enough to juggle 3 positions simultaneously. Adrian's mouth curved slightly. And you're smart enough to know when someone's offering you a lifeline. That's all the qualification I need. Lena stared at the scotch she still hadn't touched, her mind racing through possibilities and consequences. Living in Adrian DeLuca's house, working for a man whose reputation was built on violence and control. disappearing into a life that wasn't quite hers, or staying in Henderson, waiting for Robert to show up drunk and furious at her door. If I accept, she said slowly, and things don't work out, if I want to leave, then you leave. I'll provide a severance package and references that will get you hired anywhere in the city. Adrian pulled a card from his pocket and set it on the desk between them. But I suspect you won't want to leave. The certainty in his voice raised goosebumps on her arms. You seem very sure of that. I'm sure of very few things, Lena. Something flickered across his features, something almost vulnerable before his expression shuddered. But I'm sure that you deserve better than what you're getting, and I'm sure that I can provide it. She picked up the scotch and drained it in one burning swallow, the liquor scorching her throat and steadying her nerves. When she set down the glass, her hand was almost steady. When would I start? Adrian's estate sat in the hills northwest of the city, a sprawling modern fortress of glass and stone that looked like it had been carved from the desert itself. Lena pressed her forehead against the town car's window as they climbed the winding drive, her meager possessions packed into 2 garbage bags on the seat beside her. 2 days. That's all it had taken to transform her life. 2 days for Adrian's lawyers to draft contracts. 2 days for his security team to create her new identity, Elena Martinez, estate manager, with documentation so perfect it would fool federal databases. 2 days to erase Lena Carter from Henderson and install someone new in her place. The car stopped beneath a covered portico. Before Lena could reach for the door, it opened from outside. A woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes. You must be Elena. The woman's voice carried a faint European accent. I'm Sophia Rossi. I manage the household staff. Welcome. Lena climbed out, suddenly hyper-aware of her thrift store jeans and worn sneakers. Thank you. And please call me Lena. Elena feels too formal? Sophia's expression softened. Mr. DeLuca mentioned you prefer your given name. Come, I'll show you to your quarters. The estate was even more impressive inside. Soaring ceilings, art that probably cost more than Lena's education, furniture that looked designer without being ostentatious. Everything whispered wealth so old and established it didn't need to shout. Mr. DeLuca maintains a staff of 12, Sophia explained as they walked. Housekeeping, groundskeeping, security, chef. Most live off property and work set schedules. Your role is to coordinate everyone, make sure the house runs smoothly, handle any issues, manage Mr. DeLuca's personal schedule when required. They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor, then down a hallway lined with windows overlooking the desert. Sophia stopped at a door near the end. Your apartment. She handed Lena a key. Mr. DeLuca wanted you to have complete privacy. This wing is yours exclusively. Bedroom, bathroom, sitting room, small kitchen. The main house is through that door. She gestured to a second entrance. But you're under no obligation to use it outside working hours. Lena unlocked the door and stepped into a space that stole her breath. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating furniture that managed to be both elegant and comfortable. The bedroom beyond held a bed larger than her entire Henderson apartment, dressed in linens that looked like they'd been woven from clouds. This is too much, she whispered. This is appropriate for the estate manager of a property this size. Sophia's tone brooked no argument. Mr. DeLuca expects his staff to be comfortable. Dinner is at 7 if you'd like to join us in the staff dining room. Good opportunity to meet everyone, otherwise the kitchen is fully stocked. She paused at the door. Welcome home, Lena. Home. Lena waited until Sophia's footsteps faded before she locked both doors and collapsed onto the bed, her garbage bags still sitting by the entrance like refugees from her old life. What had she done? She didn't see Adrian for 3 days. Sophia explained he was handling business in Los Angeles, would be back Friday. In the meantime, Lena should familiarize herself with the estate, review staff schedules, begin learning the systems. Lena threw herself into the work with desperate focus, learned that the head of security, Victor, spoke 4 languages and had been with Adrian for 12 years, that the chef, Pierre, threw dramatic tantrums but produced food that tasted like poetry, that the housekeeping staff rotated on a complex schedule designed to ensure the 20,000 square foot estate remained pristine without anyone working excessive hours. She also learned that Adrian DeLuca's home reflected its owner, controlled, precise, revealing nothing. No family photos, no personal mementos. just expensive art and furniture arranged with mathematical precision. The only space that felt remotely human was his study, a massive room lined with books, many of them first editions worth small fortunes. Lena found herself drawn there in the evenings, running her fingers along spines and wondering what kind of man amassed a library this extensive, but never displayed anything personal. Friday evening, she was reviewing next week's maintenance schedule when Sophia appeared in her office doorway. "Mr. DeLuca has returned. He'd like to see you in his study." Lena's pulse kicked up. "Now?" "When convenient." Sophia's eyes held understanding. "He's not a monster, Lena. Whatever you're imagining, the reality is likely less dramatic." But when Lena knocked on the study door 10 minutes later, her hands were shaking. "Come in." Adrian sat behind a massive desk, still wearing his suit despite the late hour. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before, tension in his shoulders that spoke of too much stress carried too long. "Lena." He gestured to the chair across from him. "How was your first week?" She perched on the edge, fingers twisting together. "Good. Everyone's been very welcoming. The systems are more complex than I expected, but I think I'm getting the hang of—" "Relax." Adrian's mouth curved slightly. "This isn't a performance review. I wanted to check that you're settling in, that the living quarters are adequate." "They're more than adequate. She struggled for words. "I've never had this much space to myself. This much quiet." Something shifted in his expression. "Good. You needed the quiet." Silence stretched between them. Lena's eyes drifted to the books lining the walls. Everything from classical literature to modern philosophy, technical manuals to poetry. "You're a reader," Adrian observed. "Sophia mentioned you spend your evenings here." Heat crawled up her neck. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude on your private space. I wouldn't have given you access if I minded." He stood, moving to pour himself a drink. "Do you read?" "When I have time, which hasn't been often lately." Lena's eyes tracked him as he moved. The economical grace in every gesture, the coiled strength beneath expensive fabric. "I used to want to be a writer, before reality got in the way." Adrian turned, studying her with that unsettling intensity. "What kind of writer?" "Fiction. Romance, mostly. Stories where people get happy endings despite impossible circumstances." She laughed bitterly. "Naive, I know." "Not naive. Hopeful." He sipped his scotch. "The world needs more of that," says the man who runs an empire on calculated violence. The words escaped before Lena could stop them. She clapped a hand over her mouth, horror flooding through her. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean—" But Adrian was smiling. Actually smiling. Not the cold curve she'd seen before, but something almost genuine. "You're not wrong. My business requires a certain ruthlessness." He returned to his desk, that brief moment of humor fading. "But I've never pretended to be something I'm not. I don't deal in false hope or empty promises. When I give my word, I keep it." "Is that what you're doing? Keeping your word by hiring me?" "I'm keeping my word by protecting what's mine." Adrian's eyes held hers. "And you're mine now, Lena. My employee. My responsibility. Which means Hayes will have to go through me to get to you." Possessiveness edged his tone, not romantic, but territorial. Like she was a piece on his chessboard that he'd claimed and now defended. It should have frightened her. Instead, for the first time in months, Lena felt something dangerously close to safe. "Thank you," she whispered, "for all of this. I know I haven't earned—" "You'll earn it." Adrian's voice held absolute certainty. "I don't make mistakes about people, Lena. You'll prove yourself more than capable." She stood to leave, but his voice stopped her at the door. "Lena, there's a benefit dinner next Friday. Black tie, very tedious. I need you there to handle logistics, make sure everything runs smoothly." It was a reasonable request, part of her job. So why did his dark eyes hold something that felt like a test? "Of course," she agreed. "I'll make sure everything's perfect." "I know you will." Lena fled before she could analyze the warmth spreading through her chest, the dangerous flutter that came from being seen, being trusted, being valued by a man who valued so few things. Behind her, alone in his study, Adrian DeLuca sat in silence and wondered what the hell he was doing. For the first time in 3 years, watching Lena walk away, he'd felt it. Not a spark, not desire, but the faintest whisper of interest, his body recognizing something his mind couldn't yet name. It terrified him more than any enemy ever had. The black dress Sophia laid out on Lena's bed looked like it cost more than 3 months of her old rent. Silk that caught light like water, cut to skim curves Lena didn't know she had, hemline that ended just above the knee in a way that managed to be elegant without being provocative. Mr. DeLuca had it sent over this morning, Sophia explained, smoothing invisible wrinkles from the fabric. He thought you might not have appropriate attire for tonight's event. Lena's fingers traced the delicate beading along the neckline. This is too much. I can't accept. It's a uniform, essentially, part of representing the estate properly. Sophia's tone left no room for argument. The shoes and accessories are in the closet. Hair and makeup team arrives at 5. Hair and makeup team? Lena's voice climbed an octave. Sophia, I'm just coordinating logistics. I'll be behind the scenes. Mr. DeLuca requested you remain visible throughout the evening. Available if he needs anything. Something flickered across Sophia's face. Curiosity, perhaps, or concern. He's never brought estate staff to these functions before. The implication hung in the air between them. Lena swallowed hard. What kind of event is this exactly? Annual charity gala. 500 guests, most of them from Las Vegas's most prominent families, business associates, politicians, people who matter. Sophia moved toward the door, pausing on the threshold. People who will notice you standing beside Adrian DeLuca. Be prepared for that attention. After she left, Lena sank onto the bed, the silk dress pooling across her lap like liquid midnight. What was Adrian doing? Estate managers didn't attend black-tie galas. They didn't get custom designer gowns and professional styling. They certainly didn't stand beside their employers in front of 500 people who mattered. Unless this was never really about estate management at all. The thought sent ice through her veins, followed immediately by something warmer and infinitely more dangerous. She'd spent 2 weeks living in Adrian's house, managing his schedules, coordinating his staff. 2 weeks of brief encounters in hallways, professional exchanges in his study, careful distance maintained on both sides. 2 weeks of catching him watching her with an expression she couldn't read. And now he wanted her beside him, visible, dressed like she belonged in his world. Lena looked at herself in the mirror. Exhaustion still shadowed her eyes, but the haunted desperation had faded. 2 weeks of regular sleep, proper meals, safety from Robert's impending release had transformed her in ways that went beyond the physical. She looked like someone who might actually deserve the dress on her bed. The realization terrified her. The ballroom of the Venetian glittered like something from a fever dream, crystal chandeliers casting prisms across marble floors, ice sculptures melting slowly beside champagne fountains, women dripping diamonds and men wearing power like expensive cologne. Lena stood near the entrance, her new heels already pinching, and felt catastrophically out of place. You look beautiful. Adrian's voice came from behind her, low enough that only she could hear. Lena turned and nearly forgot how to breathe. He'd always been handsome in that cold, untouchable way. But Adrian DeLuca in a custom tuxedo, bow tie slightly loosened, dark hair swept back to reveal the sharp angles of his face. He was devastating. The kind of beautiful that made women stupid and men nervous. Thank you, she managed. You clean up pretty well yourself. His mouth curved, that almost smile she was learning to recognize. Sophia said the dress fits. It's perfect. Too perfect. I don't know how I'll ever consider it a bonus. Adrian's eyes traveled over her slowly, cataloging details with an intensity that raised goosebumps along her arms. Not leering. Clinical, almost. Like he was studying a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. I need you to stay close tonight. There are people here I don't trust, and I want someone watching who isn't on my usual security team. You want me to spy? I want you to observe, notice who talks to whom, who seems nervous, who's trying too hard to get my attention. He offered his arm. Can you do that? Lena hesitated only a moment before slipping her hand through the crook of his elbow. His muscles tensed beneath her fingers. She felt it, that fractional stiffening, before he relaxed again. I can do that, she agreed. They moved into the ballroom together, and Lena felt the weight of 500 gazes land on them like spotlights. Whispers rippled outward from their entrance, spreading through the crowd with the speed of wildfire. Let them look, Adrian murmured against her ear, his breath warm enough to make her shiver. Let them wonder. Speculation works in our favor. Speculation about what? About who you are. What you mean to me. His hand covered hers where it rested on his arm, fingers curling possessively. Uncertainty makes people careless. Careless people reveal things they'd otherwise hide. It was manipulation again, calculated strategy dressed up as protection. Lena should have been angry, should have pulled away, demanded to know what game he was playing. Instead, she found herself leaning closer, matching his pace perfectly as they navigated the crowd. Adrian, darling! A woman materialized from the press of bodies, 60-something, dripping in emeralds, smile sharp as cut glass. How wonderful to see you, and who is this lovely creature? Mrs. Castellano. Adrian's voice cooled several degrees. This is Elena Martinez, my estate manager. Elena, Mrs. Castellano sits on the board of several charitable organizations. The woman's eyes narrowed fractionally before her smile widened. Estate manager? How modern! I didn't realize you'd hired someone new. Elena's been with me 2 weeks, already indispensable. Adrian's thumb stroked the back of Lena's hand, an absent gesture that sent electricity up her arm. She has a remarkable talent for organization. I'm sure she does. Mrs. Castellano's gaze raked over Lena's dress, calculating its worth to the dollar. Tell me, dear, where did Adrian find you? The question dripped with condescension. Lena felt Adrian tense beside her, preparing to intervene, but she spoke first. I found him, actually, applied for a position, interviewed, got hired on merit. She met the older woman's eyes steadily. Mr. DeLuca values competence over connections. Refreshing, don't you think? Mrs. Castellano's smile froze. Indeed, how very democratic of him. She drifted away, already pulling out her phone. Within minutes, Lena knew, half the room would hear about Adrian DeLuca's mysterious new employee who'd been bold enough to challenge Margaret Castellano. You didn't have to defend yourself, Adrian said quietly, guiding her toward the bar. Yes, I did. Otherwise, they'd think I was just decoration. Lena accepted a champagne flute from the bartender, grateful for something to do with her hands. Which I suppose I am, technically, but I'd rather they respect the decoration. Adrian's laugh caught her off guard. A real laugh, low and genuine, that transformed his entire face. You continue to surprise me. Is that good or bad? I haven't decided yet. He clinked his glass against hers, eyes holding hers over the rim. But I'm beginning to suspect it's dangerous. Before Lena could ask what he meant, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. A woman entered the ballroom like royalty claiming a throne, tall, blonde, stunning in red silk that clung to her body like a second skin. Men's heads turned, women's smiles tightened, and Adrian's expression went completely, terrifyingly blank. Who is that? Lena whispered. Elena Volkov. Adrian's voice held no inflection whatsoever. My father's business partner's daughter. The woman everyone expects me to marry. Ice flooded Lena's stomach as Elena Volkov glided toward them, blue eyes fixed on Adrian with the confidence of someone who'd never been refused anything in her life. Adrian. She reached up to kiss his cheek, a gesture of casual intimacy that made Lena want to step backward, except Adrian's hand tightened on hers, holding her in place. You didn't tell me you'd be here tonight. I would have arrived earlier. I didn't know I needed to clear my schedule with you. Adrian's tone could have frozen champagne. Elena? This is Elena Martinez, my estate manager. The blonde woman's gaze slid to Lena with the kind of dismissal reserved for servants and furniture. How nice! Adrian's finally hired proper help. The last manager was absolutely useless. Couldn't even plan a simple dinner party without chaos. I'll keep that in mind, Lena said evenly, though her cheeks burned. You do that, dear. Elena turned back to Adrian, effectively erasing Lena from the conversation. Daddy wants to speak with you about the harbor project. He's in the East Salon with Senator Morrison. Shall we? It wasn't really a question. Elena slipped her arm through Adrian's free one, sandwiching him between two women in a way that looked both possessive and strategic. Adrian didn't pull away from either of them. Lead the way, he said neutrally. They crossed the ballroom as a trio, and Lena felt the weight of speculation intensify. People weren't just watching now, they were analyzing, calculating, wondering what it meant that Adrian DeLuca had arrived with his estate manager, but was now walking with Elena Volkov attached to his other side. The East Salon was quieter, populated by older men in expensive suits conducting business disguised as socializing. A silver-haired man who could only be Dmitry Volkov stood near the window, deep in conversation with a politician Lena vaguely recognized from news coverage. Adrian! Dimitri's face lit up. Come, Senator Morrison was just asking about our timeline for the new development. Elena finally released Adrian's arm, gliding to her father's side. Adrian kept his grip on Lena's hand, though, a small point of contact that felt enormous given the circumstances. Senator, Adrian shook the politician's hand with practiced ease. Good to see you. I trust the permit issues have been resolved? Working on it. You know how these things are. Paperwork, committees, more paperwork. Morrison's eyes flicked to Lena. I don't believe we've met. Elena Martinez. I manage Mr. DeLuca's estate. She'd said it 3 times tonight already. It was starting to feel like a mantra, or maybe a shield. Ah, well, any friend of Adrian's, Morrison trailed off meaningfully. Employee, Adrian corrected sharply. Elena works for me. Nothing more, nothing less. The words should have been reassuring. Instead, they landed like a slap, reducing her to exactly what Elena Volkov had implied. Hired help. Easily dismissed. Ultimately irrelevant. Lena's spine straightened. If you'll excuse me, gentlemen, I should check on the catering arrangements. Mr. DeLuca expects everything to run smoothly. She pulled her hand free and walked away before Adrian could stop her, weaving through the crowd with her head high and her eyes burning. Behind her, she heard Dmitry Volkov's booming laugh. Estate manager! That's what we're calling them now? Adrian, you devil! I didn't think you had it in you. She didn't hear Adrian's response. Didn't want to. Lena found refuge near the dessert station, pressing cool fingers against her flushed cheeks. What had she expected? Adrian had been clear from the beginning. This was a job, nothing more. The dress, the styling, standing beside him tonight, it was all theater. Strategy designed to make people wonder and speculate. She was a prop in his game, and she'd been stupid enough to forget it. You look like you could use this. A man appeared at her elbow, offering a fresh champagne flute. Late 20s, attractive in a boyish way, smile friendly without being predatory. Thank you, Lena accepted the glass gratefully. I'm the mysterious estate manager everyone's talking about. I know. I'm James Harrington. He offered his hand. My family owns a few hotels on the Strip. Nothing as impressive as the DeLuca empire, but we manage. Lena shook his hand, surprised by the genuine warmth in his grip. Elena Martinez. And I think people are making way too big a deal out of my existence. Are they? James leaned against the table, studying her with open curiosity. Adrian DeLuca shows up with a beautiful woman nobody's ever seen before, dressed like she matters, standing beside him like she belongs there. Then Elena Volkov swoops in, staking her claim, and you walk away looking like you've been stabbed. That's premium gossip material. I wasn't stabbed. I was reminded of my place. Lena sipped her champagne, welcoming the bitter fizz. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, it looked like you mattered quite a bit until Daddy Volkov started talking mergers and alliances. James's expression turned sympathetic. For what it's worth, I think Adrian's an idiot if he's actually planning to marry Elena. That woman has the warmth of a corporate takeover and the charm of a tax audit. Despite herself, Lena laughed. That's a vivid description. I'm a vivid guy. James grinned. Also, I should probably mention that Adrian's been staring at us for the past 30 seconds with an expression that suggests he's mentally planning my murder. So if I suddenly disappear, tell the police to check the desert. Lena's head snapped up. Across the ballroom, Adrian stood with the Volkovs and Senator Morrison, but his attention had clearly drifted, his dark eyes fixed on her and James with an intensity that sent heat crawling up her neck. He's probably just making sure I'm doing my job, she said weakly. Right, and I'm probably the Pope. James straightened, squaring his shoulders like a man preparing for battle. Well, if I'm going to die tonight, might as well make it count. Would you like to dance, Elena Martinez? I don't think that's a good idea. Come on, you've been standing at attention all night like a soldier on guard duty. One dance. Let him see that his estate manager has other options. It was petty, possibly stupid, definitely unprofessional. Lena took James's offered hand. One dance. The orchestra was playing something slow and elegant as James led her onto the floor. He was a decent dancer, confident without being showy, leading her through the steps with easy competence. So, he said conversationally, how long have you been in love with him? Lena stumbled. James caught her smoothly, his smile apologetic. Sorry, too direct. Occupational hazard? I spend too much time in boardrooms where subtlety gets you eaten alive. I'm not in love with Adrian DeLuca, Lena insisted, though her cheeks flamed. I've known him 3 weeks. You can't fall in love with someone in 3 weeks. You can't? James guided her through a turn. My parents met at a charity gala not unlike this one. Engaged within a month, married within 3. Still disgustingly happy 30 years later. He paused. Of course, my father wasn't a ruthless crime lord with emotional constipation and commitment issues, so that probably helped. Adrian's not a crime lord. Please. Everyone knows what he is, what his family built their fortune on. The question isn't whether he's dangerous, it's whether he's dangerous to you specifically. James's expression sobered. Be careful, Elena. Men like Adrian don't know how to care about people without consuming them. Before Lena could respond, a hand closed on James's shoulder, firm enough to stop him mid-step. Cutting in. Adrian's voice held a note of steel that made James release Lena immediately. Of course, she's all yours. James stepped back with his hands raised in surrender, but his eyes held understanding when they met Lena's. Thanks for the dance, Elena, and remember what I said. Then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd, and Lena stood alone on the dance floor with Adrian DeLuca looking at her like she'd committed treason. What did he say to you? Adrian's hand settled on her waist, pulling her closer than strictly necessary for a waltz. That your family built its fortune on crime, and you have commitment issues. Lena placed her hand on his shoulder, hyper-aware of the heat radiating through his tuxedo jacket. He wasn't wrong, was he? No. Adrian's honesty caught her off guard, but he had no right to discuss my personal life with my employee. Is that what I am? Just an employee? The question escaped before Lena could stop it. Because 5 minutes ago, you introduced me to a senator and your business partner like I was exactly that. Hired help. Nothing more. Something flickered across Adrian's face. Something that might have been guilt if he were capable of such an emotion. What did you want me to say? That you're more than that? I want to know what this is. Lena's voice climbed, forcing her to lower it quickly. The dress, the styling, bringing me here tonight. What am I supposed to be, Adrian? Your estate manager? Your date? Your shield against Elena Volkov? I need to know what role I'm playing so I can at least play it correctly. Adrian was silent for a long moment, his hand tightening on her waist as he guided her through the dance. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. I don't know. The admission clearly cost him. Lena could see it in the tension bracketing his mouth, the way his jaw clenched like he was physically fighting the words. I brought you tonight because I wanted you here, because the thought of attending this circus alone, of standing there while Dmitry Volkov talked about merger timelines and everyone expected me to propose to his daughter, he cut himself off, breathing hard. I wanted someone real beside me, someone who isn't playing a game or angling for advantage. Someone who looks at me like I'm a person instead of a prize to be won. Lena's breath caught. Adrian, but I can't offer you anything beyond what we have. I can't. His hand moved from her waist to her lower back, pressing her closer. Close enough that she could feel his heartbeat through layers of silk and expensive fabric. You need to understand something about me, Lena. I'm not capable of the things normal men feel, the things women want. I haven't been for years. What are you talking about? His dark eyes searched her face, and Lena saw something in them she'd never seen before. Vulnerability, raw and painful. 3 years ago, I was in an accident. Car bomb meant for my father. I survived, but there was damage. Psychological trauma, the doctors said. Physical shutdown. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I haven't felt desire for anyone since that night. Haven't been able to respond to a woman no matter how hard I tried. My body simply doesn't work that way anymore. The confession hung between them, devastating in its honesty. Is that why everyone expects you to marry Elena Volkov? Lena asked quietly. Because it doesn't matter who you choose if you can't. If I can't consummate the marriage anyway? Yes. Adrian's laugh was bitter. Strategic alliance wrapped in the illusion of romance. Everyone gets what they want, except the bride. That's horrible. That's reality. At least for someone like me. He pulled back slightly, enough to meet her eyes. So when you ask what you are to me, Lena, you're someone I can't ruin. Someone I can't touch even if I wanted to. Someone safe. The word landed like a blow. Safe. Not desired. Not wanted. Just safe. Lena felt something crack inside her chest. Then why does it feel like you're touching me right now? She whispered. Because he was. His hand splayed across her lower back, fingers pressing against silk with a possessiveness that made her breath catch. His other hand had moved from hers to cup the side of her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. I don't know, Adrian breathed, and for the first time she heard wonder in his voice. Not cold calculation, not strategic planning, just pure, unfiltered shock. I don't know why I want to. I don't know why touching you feels different than touching anyone else. I don't know why watching you dance with Harrington made me want to commit murder. His thumb traced her lower lip, and Lena's entire body went electric. Adrian, I should let you go. Walk away. Fire you tomorrow and make sure you're set up somewhere safe and far away from me. His forehead dropped to hers, their breath mingling in the space between. But I'm not going to, because for the first time in 3 years, Lena, I feel something other than nothing, and I'm too selfish to give that up. The music swelled around them, violins and cellos weaving something beautiful and tragic. Lena knew she should step back, should maintain professional distance, should protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak of caring about a man who just admitted he couldn't care back. Instead, she pressed closer. Then don't, she whispered against his lips. Don't let me go. Adrian's control shattered. She felt it. The moment discipline cracked and something raw and desperate emerged from beneath. His hand fisted in her hair, tilting her head back, and his mouth crashed against hers with bruising intensity. The kiss wasn't gentle, wasn't romantic. It was 3 years of frustration and confusion and desperate need poured into a single point of contact. Lena gasped against his lips and Adrian swallowed the sound, kissing her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Around them, the ballroom faded to white noise. 500 people watching meant nothing. Elena Volkov's sharp inhale of outrage meant nothing. The whispers and gasps and furious clicking of cell phone cameras meant absolutely nothing. There was only Adrian's mouth on hers, his hands anchoring her against him, his heart hammering against her palm where it pressed against his chest. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the music had stopped. The dance floor had cleared, and every single person in the ballroom was staring at them with expressions ranging from shock to fury to predatory delight. Well, Adrian said, his voice rough but steady, I suppose that answers the question of what you are to me. Lena looked up at him, at the man who'd claimed he felt nothing, who'd kissed her like she was everything. And what's that? Mine. The word came out dark and possessive and absolutely certain. For better or worse, Lena Carter, you're mine. Across the ballroom, Elena Volkov's champagne flute shattered against marble floor. Dmitry Volkov's face had gone purple with rage. And Lena's carefully constructed new life as invisible estate manager, Elena Martinez, burned to ash in the face of 500 witnesses who just watched Adrian DeLuca publicly claim her. She should have been terrified. Instead, wrapped in Adrian's arms with her lips still burning from his kiss, Lena felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The ride back to the estate happened in silence so thick it felt solid. Adrian sat on one side of the town car, Lena on the other, the leather seat between them, a canyon neither knew how to cross. Outside the tinted windows, Vegas lights blurred into streaks of neon, the city that never slept, that thrived on scandal and spectacle, that would wake up tomorrow morning with their kiss splashed across every gossip site and society column. Lena's phone had buzzed 17 times before she'd turned it off. Sophia, Victor, numbers she didn't recognize, all of them wanting answers she didn't have. I'm sorry. Adrian's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Lena's head snapped toward him. For what? For losing control, for kissing you in front of 500 people who will use it against us both, for dragging you into something you didn't sign up for. His jaw was tight enough to shatter. I should have been stronger. You kissed me because you wanted to. Lena's voice shook, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. Don't apologize for that. Don't you dare take it back. Wanting isn't enough. Adrian's hands clenched into fists against his thighs. Wanting doesn't change what I am, what I can't give you. You just told me you haven't felt anything in 3 years. That touching me is different. That... She cut herself off, afraid to voice the hope building in her chest. How can you kiss me like that and then act like it meant nothing? It meant everything. The confession tore out of him. That's the problem, Lena. It meant everything, and I still don't know if my body will cooperate. If this feeling will last or if it'll disappear the moment we're alone and the adrenaline fades. His dark eyes held anguish. I won't use you to test whether I'm fixed. Won't make you an experiment in my dysfunction. The car pulled through the estate gates. Lena waited until they'd stopped under the portico, until the driver had opened her door and disappeared discreetly, before she spoke. What if I want to be tested? She slid across the seat, closing the distance between them. What if I'm willing to risk being disappointed if it means you might actually feel something real? Adrian's breath caught. His hand lifted, hovering inches from her face like he was afraid to touch her again. You don't know what you're asking. Then tell me. Lena caught his wrist, pressing his palm against her cheek. Tell me what happens now. Tell me what you want. I want to take you upstairs. His voice dropped to gravel. I want to strip that dress off and find out if my body remembers how to worship a woman the way she deserves. I want to learn every sound you make, every place that makes you gasp, every way to make you come apart in my hands. Heat flooded Lena's body, pooling low in her belly. Then do it. And when nothing happens, when I'm inside you and still feel nothing, when you're underneath me, desperate and wanting, and I can't give you what you need? Adrian's thumb stroked her cheekbone, the touch devastating in its gentleness. You'll hate me, or worse, you'll pity me. I can't bear either. Lena understood then. This wasn't about protecting her. It was about protecting himself from the crushing weight of another failure. I could never hate you, she whispered. And I already know you're broken, Adrian. You told me. I'm choosing you anyway. His control wavered. She saw it in the way his pupils dilated, the way his breathing roughened, the way his free hand moved to her waist and pulled her closer. This is a mistake, he said against her hair. Probably. Lena's fingers found his bow tie, loosening it with trembling hands. Do you care? No. Adrian's mouth found hers again, softer this time, but no less desperate. Not even a little. They barely made it inside before his hands were in her hair, her back pressed against the foyer wall as Adrian kissed her like he was trying to prove something. To her. To himself. To the universe that had broken him. Lena's fingers worked the buttons of his shirt, needing to feel skin, needing to know this was real. Adrian caught her hands, pressing them above her head with one of his own. Slow, he commanded, though his voice shook. We go slow, or I'll lose what little control I have left. I don't want your control. Lena arched against him, feeling the hard length of him pressed against her hip. He wanted her. His body knew it, even if his mind didn't believe it yet. I want you. All of you. Broken pieces included. Adrian's forehead dropped to hers, his breath coming in harsh pants. Upstairs. Now. Before I take you right here, where anyone could walk in. He released her hands and Lena immediately reached for him again, but Adrian caught her wrist. Walk, Lena. You walk up those stairs on your own, or I'll carry you. But either way, we're not stopping until I've proven to both of us that I can make you feel everything I've been dead to for 3 years. Lena walked. Adrian's bedroom was exactly what she'd expected. Massive, minimalist, every surface chosen for function rather than comfort. But the bed dominated the space, king-sized and covered in charcoal silk that probably cost more than a car. Adrian locked the door behind them, the click of the mechanism loud in the charged silence. Then he moved to the windows, drawing heavy curtains until the room filled with shadows broken only by ambient light from the strip in the distance. Come here. It wasn't a request. Lena crossed to him, her heels clicking against hardwood. Adrian's hands found the zipper of her dress, lowering it with agonizing slowness. The silk whispered down her body, pooling at her feet in a puddle of midnight blue. She stood before him in nothing but black lace and heels, her skin pebbling in the cool air. Or maybe from the way Adrian looked at her, like she was water and he was dying of thirst. You're shaking. His fingers traced the curve of her shoulder down her arm, leaving goosebumps in their wake. So are you. Adrian's laugh was rough. Terrified. I'm absolutely terrified. Of what? That this won't work. That I'll get you naked and desperate and my body will remember it's broken. He pulled her against him, still fully dressed, while she wore almost nothing. The contrast should have been humiliating. Instead, it felt powerful. That I'll disappoint you. Lena reached up, framing his face with her hands. The only way you could disappoint me is if you stopped trying. If you shut down and walked away because you're afraid. She kissed him softly. I'm not afraid of your dysfunction, Adrian. I'm afraid you'll use it as an excuse to push me away. Something in his expression cracked. He kissed her back, deep and claiming, his tongue sweeping into her mouth like he was staking ownership. His hands roamed her body with increasing confidence, learning curves and dips, finding the clasp of her bra and releasing it with practiced ease. The lace fell away. Adrian's hands cupped her breasts, thumbs brushing over nipples already tight with need. Lena gasped against his mouth and he swallowed the sound, groaning low in his throat. "I feel that," he said, wonder threading his voice. "Your response. The way you arch into my touch. I feel it, Lena." "Then feel more." She worked his shirt open, finally getting her hands on the warm skin she'd been craving. Adrian's chest was a sculpture, all lean muscle and controlled power, marred by a vicious scar that ran from his left shoulder down to his ribs. Evidence of the bomb that had broken him. Lena traced the scar with gentle fingers. Adrian flinched but didn't pull away. "Does it hurt?" "Not anymore. Not for years." His hands moved to her waist, lifting her easily onto the bed. "But sometimes I feel the phantom pain, a reminder of what I lost that night." Lena lay back against the silk sheets, watching as Adrian stripped off his remaining clothes with economical movements. His body was exactly what she'd imagined, lean and dangerous, every line speaking to discipline and control. And between his thighs, hard and ready, evidence that his body remembered this even if his mind doubted. "You're not broken," Lena whispered as he lowered himself over her. "You're healing." Adrian settled between her legs, the weight of him delicious and overwhelming. "Let's find out." His mouth found her throat, teeth grazing sensitive skin before soothing with his tongue. Lena's hands fisted in his hair as he worked his way down, across her collarbone, between her breasts, down the flat plane of her stomach. When he hooked his fingers in her panties and dragged them down her legs, Lena forgot how to breathe. "Beautiful," Adrian murmured against her inner thigh. "Every inch of you." Then his mouth was on her, and Lena's world narrowed to the slide of his tongue, the pressure of his fingers, the devastating focus he brought to learning exactly how to unmake her. He worked her with the same precision he brought to everything, cataloging what made her gasp, what made her writhe, what made her beg. "Adrian, please, I can't." "You can." His voice vibrated against her most sensitive flesh. "Let me see you come apart, Lena. Let me know I can still do this." His fingers curled inside her, finding a spot that made her vision white out. Pleasure crashed through her body in waves so intense she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel as Adrian worked her through the orgasm with ruthless efficiency. When she finally floated back down, Adrian was watching her with an expression of such raw hunger, it stole her remaining breath. "Again," he commanded. "I want to watch you fall apart again." You need. Lena reached for him, needing him inside her, needing to know this was real. "I need to be sure." Adrian's hand replaced his mouth, fingers working her oversensitive flesh with devastating precision. "I need to know I can make you feel this, that I'm not just going through motions." "You're not..." "Adrian, oh..." The second orgasm built faster, sharper, dragging her under before she could prepare. She cried out his name as pleasure detonated through her nervous system, so intense it bordered on pain. Adrian's control finally snapped. He surged up her body, capturing her mouth in a bruising kiss as his hips settled against hers. Lena felt him there, hard and ready, and trembling with the effort of holding back. "Tell me you want this," he demanded against her lips. "Tell me you understand what you're asking for. I want you inside me." Lena wrapped her legs around his waist, opening herself completely. "I want you to stop thinking and just feel. Please, Adrian, I need you." He entered her in one smooth thrust that punched the air from her lungs. Lena's nails dug into his shoulders as her body adjusted to the intrusion, the fullness, the stretch, the overwhelming rightness of finally being connected to him. Adrian went absolutely still, buried deep inside her, his whole body rigid with tension. "I feel it," he breathed, awe and terror and desperate hope warring in his voice. "I feel you, tight and hot and perfect around me. I feel everything, Lena." Tears burned Lena's eyes. "Then move, please move." Adrian pulled back and thrust home again, groaning like a man receiving absolution. He set a rhythm that was somehow both controlled and desperate, each stroke calculated to drive them both higher while he fought to maintain the connection, to prove to himself this was real. Lena met him thrust for thrust, her body climbing toward a third peak she didn't think was possible. "Harder. Don't hold back, I won't break. You might. But Adrian's hips snapped forward with more force, driving deeper. You might break me instead. Then we'll be broken together. Something in those words shattered his remaining restraint. Adrian's hand fisted in her hair, tilting her head back to expose her throat as he pounded into her with abandon. No more calculation. No more control. Just raw need. And 3 years of frustration finally finding release. Lena came apart screaming his name, her body clenching around him so tightly she felt him lose rhythm. Adrian followed her over the edge with a shout that sounded like triumph and surrender combined, spilling inside her as his body finally remembered what it meant to feel pleasure instead of numbness. They collapsed together, sweat slicked and breathing hard. Adrian rolled to his side, pulling Lena with him, so they remained connected. His hand stroked her hair with a gentleness that contradicted the rough claiming of moments before. That was... He stopped, searching for words. I don't have words. Perfect? Lena suggested, her voice muffled against his chest. Devastating. Adrian tilted her face up to meet his eyes. I thought I'd never feel that again. Never want someone enough to lose control. Never find someone who made me forget to be careful. His thumb brushed her kiss-swollen lips. You destroyed 3 years of careful numbness in 3 weeks, Lena Carter. That terrifies me more than anything in my world. Good. Lena kissed him softly. You needed to be terrified, needed to feel something other than control. What happens now? The question held vulnerability she'd never heard from him before. Lena considered the wreckage they'd created. Her carefully planned invisibility destroyed by that public kiss. His strategic marriage alliance presumably ruined, both their lives irrevocably tangled. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Dmitry Volkov's rage, Elena Volkov's vengeance, questions from staff, demands from Adrian's family. But right now, wrapped in his arms with her body still humming from his touch, tomorrow felt very far away. Now we sleep, she decided, and tomorrow we figure out how to survive what we started tonight. Adrian's arms tightened around her. I'm not letting you go. Whatever happens, whatever my family demands or Volkov threatens, you're mine. I'm keeping you. It should have sounded possessive, should have raised every red flag about controlling men and dangerous attachments. Instead, it sounded like a promise. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through gaps in the curtains and the sound of Adrian's phone vibrating insistently against the nightstand. She felt him tense beside her, the warmth of his body disappearing as he reached for the device. Marco. Adrian's voice was rough with sleep. What is it? Lena watched his expression shudder as he listened, his jaw tightening with each passing second. When he finally spoke again, his voice had returned to that cold, controlled tone she recognized from their first meeting. Lock it down. No statements to press. No comments to anyone. I'll handle the family. He paused. Yes, she's staying. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. He ended the call and scrubbed a hand over his face. In the morning light, he looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, tension bracketing his mouth. How bad? Lena asked quietly. Every gossip site in Vegas has photos of us kissing. Elena Volkov's PR team is spinning it as a momentary lapse in judgment on my part. Dmitry is demanding a meeting. Adrian turned to face her, his expression unreadable. My mother called 6 times, my father 4. The rest of my family is having a collective meltdown. Because you kissed someone they didn't approve of. Because I publicly humiliated the Volkovs, jeopardized a business alliance worth hundreds of millions, and claimed a woman nobody knows anything about. His fingers traced the curve of her shoulder. They'll investigate you, Lena. Dig into your past. Find out about Robert Hayes and your real name and every secret you're running from. Ice flooded her veins. Robert gets out in 2 weeks. I know, Marco's already arranged for surveillance. The moment Hayes is released, we'll know where he goes, who he talks to, what he's planning. Adrian's hand moved to cup her face. He won't get near you, I promise. You can't promise that. You don't know what he's capable of. Neither does he know what I'm capable of. Adrian's voice dropped to something dark and deadly. If Hayes comes after you, he'll discover exactly why people fear the DeLuca name. I protect what's mine, Lena. Always. There was that word again. Mine. Branding her as his possession, even as he claimed to offer protection. Lena should have been angry, should have asserted her independence, reminded him she was a person, not a belonging. Instead, She kissed him, soft and searching, trying to convey everything she couldn't articulate. Adrian kissed her back with a gentleness that contradicted his threatening words, his hands cradling her face like she was something precious and fragile. "I need to meet with my family today," he said against her lips. "Face the firing squad. You should stay here, stay safe." "Absolutely not." Lena pulled back, steel entering her voice. "You don't get to claim me publicly and then hide me when things get difficult. I'm coming with you." "Lena, we're in this together now, Adrian. You made sure of that when you kissed me in front of 500 witnesses." She climbed out of bed, gloriously naked and utterly unashamed. "So either I come to this meeting as your whatever I am, or I walk out that door and you face them alone. Your choice." Adrian's eyes tracked her movement across the room, heat kindling in their depths despite the serious conversation. "You're not my girlfriend. That word's too small for what you are." "Then what am I?" "Mine." He rose from the bed, stalking toward her with predatory grace. "My partner. My weakness. My reason for destroying alliances that took decades to build." His hand settled on her waist, pulling her against him. "The woman I'm falling in love with despite every logical reason not to." Lena's heart stopped. "You're what?" "Falling. Probably already fallen. I don't know. I've never felt this before." Adrian's forehead dropped to hers. "I should be strategic about this. Careful. But all I can think about is keeping you safe and making sure you never look at another man the way you looked at James Harrington last night. I looked at him like a friend. You looked at him like someone who could offer you a normal life. Someone without blood on his hands and enemies circling. Someone who could love you without putting you in danger." Adrian's grip tightened. "I can't be that man, Lena, but I'm selfish enough to want you anyway." Lena's hands framed his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "I don't want normal. I want you. Danger and darkness and broken pieces included. So stop trying to protect me from yourself and let me decide what I can handle." Adrian kissed her until neither of them could breathe, until his control started fraying again and Lena's body responded with liquid heat. When they finally broke apart, his voice was rough with need. "We have 2 hours before the family meeting. I'm going to spend at least one of them reminding you exactly what you've agreed to handle." He proved as good as his word. The DeLuca family estate made Adrian's house look modest. Lena stared through the town car window at the sprawling Mediterranean mansion that dominated 20 acres of prime real estate, complete with fountains, manicured gardens, and enough security to protect a small country. Second thoughts? Adrian's hand covered hers where it rested on the seat between them. "Absolutely." Lena's laugh was shaky. "But I'm not backing down. You could wait in the car. Let me handle this alone. And prove to your family that I'm exactly what they think. Some gold digger who can't stand up to scrutiny?" Lena squared her shoulders. "No. We walk in together, or not at all." Pride flickered across Adrian's features. "That's my girl." They exited the car together, Adrian's hand firm on the small of her back as they climbed marble steps to an entrance hall that belonged in a museum. A woman waited inside, early 60s, elegant in a way that came from money and breeding. Her dark hair swept into a perfect chignon. Her eyes, the same color as Adrian's, fixed on Lena with an expression that could cut glass. "Adrian," her voice held arctic disapproval, "and this must be the estate manager who's caused such a spectacle." "Mother." Adrian's tone matched hers for coldness. "This is Lena Carter. Lena, my mother, Isabella DeLuca." Isabella's eyes narrowed fractionally at the name. "Carter, not Martinez as you told the Volkovs." "Martinez was a precaution. Carter is her real name." Adrian's hand tightened on Lena's back. "Where's father?" "The study, with Dmitry Volkov, who is understandably furious." Isabella's gaze raked over Lena's modest dress, professional but nowhere near the designer elegance of the night before. "I suppose we should be grateful you had the sense to dress appropriately today, Miss Carter, though it's rather like closing the barn door after the horses have escaped." "Mother." "Don't mother me, Adrian. You've jeopardized an alliance your father spent 5 years building, humiliated a woman whose family controls half the Eastern European routes we need for expansion. And for what? A cocktail waitress you've known 3 weeks?" Heat crawled up Lena's neck, but she forced herself to meet Isabella's eyes. "I understand this is difficult for you, Mrs. DeLuca, but I didn't plan any of this. Neither did Adrian. It just happened." Love doesn't just happen in our world, Miss Carter. It's negotiated, strategized, beneficial to both parties. Isabella's smile was razor sharp. But perhaps you're unfamiliar with how real families operate, given your background. The implication landed like a slap. Lena's hands clenched at her sides, but before she could respond, Adrian stepped between them. Careful, Mother. Lena is under my protection now. Insults directed at her are insults directed at me. His voice held quiet menace. I'd hate for our relationship to suffer because you couldn't control your tongue. Isabella's eyes widened fractionally, the first crack in her perfect composure. You're choosing her over your family. I'm choosing her, period. What the family does with that information is up to them. Adrian offered Lena his arm. Shall we? I'd rather face Dimitri's rage than stand here listening to passive-aggressive commentary. They left Isabella standing in the entrance hall, her expression oscillating between fury and shock. Lena's heart hammered as Adrian led her through corridors lined with family portraits, generations of DeLucas staring down with varying degrees of judgment. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to come between you and your mother. You didn't. She did by attacking you. Adrian paused outside an ornate wooden door, his hand on the handle. Last chance to wait outside, Lena. What happens beyond this door won't be pleasant. I'm not leaving you. Then stay close. Don't let anything they say make you doubt us. He kissed her forehead gently. And remember, I chose you. Whatever they threaten, whatever they promise, I already made my choice. He pushed open the door. The study was enormous, dominated by a desk that looked like it could double as a landing strip. Behind it sat a man who could only be Adrian's father, older, broader, with the same dark eyes but harder, colder. And standing beside the desk, face purple with rage, was Dmitry Volkov. You have some nerve bringing her here, Dmitri's voice boomed across the room. After what you did to my daughter. What I did was kiss a woman I care about. Adrian's hand never left Lena's back. If Elena's feelings were hurt by that, she has my apologies. But I won't apologize for following my heart. Your heart? Dmitri spat the word like a curse. You don't have a heart, Adrian. You have a calculator where other men have emotions. This is about power, or revenge, or some game you're playing. This is about Lena. Adrian's voice cut through the tirade. About the fact that for the first time in 3 years, I feel something other than nothing. About choosing life over strategy. Thus, then you choose poorly. Adrian's father finally spoke, his voice gravelly with decades of cigarettes and whiskey. The Volkov alliance controls routes we need. Dmitri's connections open doors that stay closed to us otherwise. You throw that away for what? A woman you'll tire of in 6 months? Careful, father. Adrian's tone dropped to something dangerous. You're talking about the woman I intend to marry. The room went silent. Lena's head snapped toward Adrian, shock stealing her breath. They'd never discussed marriage, never talked about anything beyond protecting her from Robert Hayes and figuring out what they were to each other. Mary, Dmitri's laugh was ugly. You can't be serious. Elena is not the woman I love, not the woman I choose, not the woman who'll stand beside me as my wife. Adrian's hand moved to lace his fingers through Lena's, presenting a united front. The alliance with the Volkovs is terminated, effective immediately. If you want to continue doing business with the DeLuca family, you'll accept that and move forward. If not, then our partnership ends here. Dmitri's face went from purple to nearly black. You'll regret this, Adrian. When you're bleeding money and watching your empire crumble because you chose pussy over power. Adrian moved so fast Lena barely registered it. One moment he was beside her, the next he had Dmitri pinned against the wall, forearm pressed to the older man's throat. Say another disrespectful word about her, an alliance or not, I'll remind you why people fear the DeLuca name. Adrian's voice was conversational, which made the threat infinitely more terrifying. She's mine, under my protection, and if you or your daughter come anywhere near her with intent to harm, you'll discover exactly how ruthless I can be. Adrian, his father's voice cracked like a whip. Release him, now! Adrian held Dmitri for 3 more seconds, long enough to make his point, before stepping back. Dmitri straightened his jacket with shaking hands, rage and fear warring in his expression. You've made an enemy today, boy. I've made the right choice. Adrian returned to Lena's side, his hand finding hers again. And I'd make it again every time. Dmitri stormed from the room, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the portraits on the walls. Silence settled heavy and thick. Adrian's father studied them both with an expression Lena couldn't read. Finally, he spoke. "You're serious about this girl?" "Her name is Lena, and yes, completely serious." "Then you understand what you've sacrificed. The Volkov routes, the Eastern European connections, the political capital Dmitri provided." He leaned back in his chair. "Was she worth it?" "Yes." Adrian didn't hesitate. 1,000 times yes. His father's gaze shifted to Lena, assessment cold and thorough. "What makes you worth destroying an empire for, Miss Carter?" Lena forced herself to stand tall, to meet those calculating eyes without flinching. "Nothing, probably. I'm nobody special, no connections, no money, no strategic value." She glanced at Adrian, drawing strength from his unwavering presence. "But I love your son, and he loves me. In a world where everything is negotiated and strategized, maybe that's worth something." Silence stretched for an eternity. Then, impossibly, Adrian's father smiled, a small, grudging curve of his mouth. "She's got spine, I'll give her that." He stood, moving around the desk to stand before them. "You want my blessing, Adrian? You won't get it. You want my approval? Don't hold your breath. But you are my son, and this is your choice to make." His eyes hardened. "But understand, the consequences of this choice are yours alone. The Volkovs will retaliate. Your enemies will see this as weakness. You'll have to fight twice as hard to maintain respect." "I know." Adrian's hand tightened on Lena's. "I'm prepared for that." "Then prepare her too, because they won't just come after you. They'll come after her, test her, try to break her, use her to hurt you." His gaze fixed on Lena. "Are you prepared for that, Miss Carter? To have a target on your back simply for loving my son?" Lena thought of Robert Hayes, drunk and furious. Thought of years spent invisible, running, hiding. Thought of the woman she'd been 3 weeks ago, exhausted and desperate and slowly disappearing. Then she thought of Adrian's hands on her body, his voice rough with wonder as he'd told her he could feel again. Thought of the way he looked at her like she mattered, like she was worth destroying alliances for. "I'm prepared," she said firmly. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together." Adrian's father nodded slowly. "Then welcome to the family, Miss Carter, though I suspect you'll come to regret that acceptance soon enough." It wasn't a blessing, but it wasn't outright rejection either. They'd take it. The first threat came 3 days later, delivered to the estate in an unmarked envelope with Lena's name written in elegant script across the front. Sophia brought it to her office, worry etched into the lines around her eyes. This was left at the gate. Security checked it. No explosives, no biological agents. But she hesitated. "Perhaps you should let Mr. DeLuca open it." Lena's hands trembled as she took the envelope. The paper felt expensive, the kind used for wedding invitations or funeral announcements. She slid her finger under the seal and pulled out a single card embossed with gold lettering. "Enjoy him while you can. Women like you don't keep men like him. Eventually he'll remember where he belongs, and it isn't with trash pretending to be treasure. E.V." Elena Volkov's initials burned at the bottom like a brand. Lena read it twice before crumpling the card in her fist. Sophia watched her with concern, clearly expecting tears or panic. Instead, Lena felt something cold and hard settle in her chest, something that felt dangerously like determination. "Is Mr. DeLuca home?" Her voice came out steady, controlled. "In his study. Lena, maybe you should—" But Lena was already moving, the crumpled threat clutched in her hand like evidence. She found Adrian behind his desk, reviewing contracts with Marco standing beside him. Both men looked up when she entered, Adrian's expression immediately shifting from business to concern. "What happened?" Lena tossed the crumpled card onto his desk. Adrian smoothed it out, his jaw tightening as he read. Marco leaned over to scan it, his expression darkening. "I'll have security increased," Marco said immediately. "Triple the perimeter checks. Add cameras to—" "No!" Lena's voice cut through his planning. "I don't want to hide behind more security. I want to face this." Adrian stood, moving around the desk to stand before her. "Lena, Elena Volkov is dangerous. This isn't just a jealous woman sending nasty notes. Her family has resources, connections, the ability to make your life miserable." "Then let her try." Lena lifted her chin. "I'm done being afraid, done hiding, done letting powerful people make me feel small." She met his eyes, holding his gaze. "You said you chose me. that I'm yours. So either you meant it and we stand together, or you didn't, and I walk away before this gets worse. Something flickered across Adrian's face. Surprise, then pride, then fierce possessiveness. I meant every word, but standing together doesn't mean putting yourself in unnecessary danger. All danger is unnecessary when you're trying to avoid it. Lena moved closer, pressing her palm against his chest where she could feel his heartbeat. But I didn't fall in love with you because it was safe. I fell because you made me feel alive again, powerful, like I mattered. Her voice softened. Don't take that away by wrapping me in bubble wrap and hiding me in your fortress. Adrian's hand covered hers, pressing it more firmly against his heart. You're asking me to let you walk into crossfire. I'm asking you to trust that I'm strong enough to handle it, that we're strong enough. Lena glanced at Marco, who was watching their exchange with barely concealed fascination. What would you do if someone threatened you this way? Marco's smile was sharp as a blade. Make them regret it, publicly and permanently. Then that's what we do. Lena turned back to Adrian. Elena wants to play games, fine, let's play, but we play to win. Adrian studied her face for a long moment, his thumb stroking the back of her hand. Finally, he nodded. What do you have in mind? What Lena had in mind was simple, elegant, and would either cement her place in Adrian's world or destroy her completely. She spent the next week writing, not estate management reports or scheduling documents, but something far more dangerous. A story. Her story. Transformed into fiction compelling enough that readers wouldn't care where the inspiration came from. She wrote late into the night, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard, weaving truth and imagination until the lines blurred. A young woman desperate and invisible. A powerful man broken by trauma. The collision of their worlds, the impossibility of their connection, the choice between safety and love. She wrote their first meeting in the alley, the terror and strange attraction. Wrote the offer of employment that was really a rescue. Wrote stolen glances and careful distance, and the moment everything changed at a glittering gala when he'd kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. The story poured out of her in a torrent she couldn't control. All the emotions she struggled to articulate in real life finding perfect expression on the page. She didn't name names, changed identifying details enough to provide deniability. But anyone who'd followed the gossip, who'd seen those photos of Adrian DeLuca kissing an unknown woman, would recognize the bones of truth beneath the fictional flesh. By the end of the week, she had 50,000 words of the most honest, vulnerable, terrifying things she'd ever written. What is this? Adrian's voice came from behind her, making Lena jump. She'd been so absorbed in editing she hadn't heard him enter her apartment. A story. She closed the laptop quickly, heat flooding her cheeks. Just something I've been working on. Adrian moved to sit beside her on the couch, his presence warm and solid. About us? There was no point lying. Based on us, fictionalized, but yes, the core of it is real. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I needed to process everything that's happened. Writing has always been how I make sense of the world. Can I read it? Lena's first instinct was to refuse, to protect this raw piece of herself from judgment, but they'd promised honesty, vulnerability, trust. She opened the laptop and handed it over. It's rough. Needs editing. Probably too emotional in places and not emotional enough in others. The pacing might be off, and I haven't figured out the ending yet because I don't know how our story ends. She was babbling, words spilling out to fill the terrifying silence. Adrian's hand covered hers, stilling her nervous fidgeting. Breathe, Lena. I'm just reading. She watched his face as he read, trying to gauge his reaction. His expression remained neutral for the first few pages. Then something shifted. His jaw tightened, his breathing deepened, and when he reached the scene of their first night together, tastefully written but undeniably intimate, his hand found hers and squeezed. An hour passed. Then 2. Lena made coffee, paced her apartment, resisted the urge to rip the laptop away and delete everything. Finally, Adrian looked up. This is extraordinary. His voice was rough with emotion. Raw and honest and so beautiful it hurts to read. Relief flooded through her. You're not angry? That I wrote about us? How could I be angry? You've taken everything we are, the broken pieces, the impossible timing, the choice between safety and love, and made it matter. Adrian pulled her into his lap, the laptop balanced on the arm of the couch. What are you planning to do with it? Lena took a breath, steadying herself for his reaction. Publish it. Online, under a pen name. Build an audience. Let it spread. She met his eyes. Show Elena Volkov and everyone else who thinks I'm just trash pretending to be treasure that I'm a woman with talent, with voice, with something valuable to offer beyond my connection to you. Understanding dawned across Adrian's features. You want to claim your own power. I want to stop being Adrian DeLuca's mysterious woman and start being Lena Carter, writer, someone who matters on her own merits. Her fingers tangled in his hair. I know it's risky. Know it might draw more attention, might make things harder. But I can't keep hiding behind your protection, Adrian. I need to stand on my own. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his hands stroking her back in soothing circles. Finally, he spoke. Then we make it happen. Marco knows people in digital publishing, influencers who could help it gain traction. We'll protect your identity until you're ready to reveal yourself, but we'll make sure your work gets seen. You're sure? This could backfire, could make us more vulnerable, or it could make you untouchable. Adrian's smile was fierce. Hard to threaten a woman whose story is being read by millions. Hard to make her disappear when she's become someone people care about. He kissed her softly. Publish it, Lena. Show the world who you really are. The story went live on a Friday night, posted to a fiction platform under the pen name L.M. Carter. Lena had agonized over every detail, the cover design, the chapter breaks, the author bio that revealed nothing while promising everything. Marco had worked his connections, getting the story featured on popular blogs and recommendation lists, creating buzz without revealing who was behind it. By Saturday morning, it had 5,000 reads. By Sunday, 20,000. Monday brought 50,000 and climbing, with comments flooding in from readers captivated by the raw honesty, the emotional depth, the romance that felt real because it was. Have you seen this? Sophia burst into Lena's office Tuesday afternoon, phone in hand. Book talk is going insane. Everyone's trying to figure out who L.M. Carter is and if the story is based on real events. Lena's stomach twisted with anxiety and excitement. What are they saying? That it's the most authentic romance they've read in years. That the male lead feels real, broken and dangerous and capable of devastating love. That the female protagonist isn't some passive damsel, but a woman fighting to claim her own power. Sophia's eyes gleamed. They're calling it the next viral sensation. The response was everything Lena had hoped for and everything she'd feared. Each comment praising her writing sent warmth through her chest. Each speculation about the true identity of the author made her pulse race. And the private messages, readers sharing their own stories of choosing dangerous love, of finding strength in vulnerability, of refusing to be small, those made her cry. But with visibility came exposure. The call came Wednesday evening while Lena was having dinner with Adrian. His phone lit up with Marco's name, and the expression that crossed Adrian's face when he answered made ice flood Lena's veins. When? Adrian's voice was clipped, controlled. How did he know? A pause. I'm on my way. Double the security here. Nobody in or out without my explicit approval. He ended the call and looked at Lena with something that might have been fear if Adrian DeLuca was capable of such an emotion. Robert Hayes was released from prison this morning, 6 days early for good behavior. Adrian's hand found hers across the table. He went directly to your old apartment in Henderson. When he found you gone, he started asking questions. Neighbors, former coworkers, anyone who might know where you went. Lena's hands started shaking. Did he find anything? Not yet. Your identity change was thorough. Elena Martinez exists only on paper, but Hayes is persistent and angry. Marco's team is tracking him, but Adrian squeezed her hand. We need to assume he'll eventually connect the dots. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but eventually. Then what do? We end this. Adrian's voice dropped to something cold and deadly. Tonight, before he gets close enough to hurt you. Terror and something that felt dangerously like relief warred in Lena's chest. How? Leave that to me. Adrian stood, pulling her with him. Pack a bag. You're staying in the main house tonight, in my room where I can protect you. And Lena? His hands framed her face. Whatever happens with Hayes, whatever I have to do to keep you safe, I need you to trust that it's necessary. The implication in his words was clear. Adrian DeLuca hadn't built his empire on mercy and second chances. If Robert Hayes posed a threat, Adrian would eliminate that threat permanently. I trust you, Lena whispered, and meant it. She was packing when her phone rang. an unknown number that made her heart stutter. Her hand hovered over the decline button, but something made her answer. Lena Marie Carter. Robert Hayes's voice slithered through the speaker, too familiar, dripping with malice. Thought you could disappear on me, didn't you? Thought you could change your name and run away like your whore mother tried to do? Lena's blood turned to ice. How did you get this number? I got friends, sweetheart. Friends who know people. Friends who saw those pictures of you all over the internet, kissing some rich asshole at a fancy party. His laugh was ugly. Imagine my surprise when I recognized my little stepdaughter playing dress-up with the criminal elite. I'm not your anything anymore. You have no claim on me. I raised you, fed you, kept a roof over your head after your daddy died and your mama gave up. Robert's voice turned vicious. You owe me, Lena, and I'm going to collect every penny I spent on you plus interest for the disrespect. Go to hell. I'll see you first. That fancy house you're hiding in? I know where it is, know how to get past the gates, know exactly which window is yours. The threat hung heavy in the sudden silence. You got 48 hours to meet me with cash or I'm coming for you. And your boyfriend's security won't stop me. They'll just make it more fun when I gut you in front of him. The line went dead. Lena stood frozen, phone clutched in her trembling hand, Robert's threats echoing in her ears. She should call Adrian, should tell him immediately, should let him handle this with whatever ruthless efficiency he'd promised. Instead, she found herself thinking about the woman in her story, the protagonist who'd stopped running, who'd chosen to stand and fight, who'd claimed her own power instead of hiding behind someone else's protection. A terrible, dangerous idea began forming in her mind. She was still considering it when Adrian burst into her apartment, having clearly been alerted by Marco's team monitoring her phone. He called you. It wasn't a question. Yes. Lena set down her phone with careful precision. He wants money. 48 hours to deliver cash or he's coming after me. Adrian's expression went absolutely glacial. He won't get the chance. Marco's already tracking him. We'll have his location within the hour. I'll send people to handle it quietly. He'll disappear, and you'll never have to worry about him again. No. Adrian went still. What? I don't want him to disappear. I don't want you to handle it for me. Lena moved toward him, determination overriding fear. I want to meet him, face him, end this myself. Absolutely not. Adrian's voice cracked like a whip. I'm not letting you anywhere near that man. He's dangerous, violent, has nothing to lose, and I'm tired of running from him. Lena's voice rose to match his. I've spent years being afraid, years making myself invisible because I was terrified he'd find me. I'm done, Adrian. I'm done being his victim. So let me make him disappear. Let me protect you. By killing him? By adding his blood to your hands? Lena shook her head. No, I won't let you become more of what you hate just to save me from my past. Robert Hayes is my monster. I need to be the one who slays him. Adrian's hands fisted at his sides, every muscle rigid with the effort of controlling his protective instincts. What are you suggesting? I meet him. In a public place, with your security watching from a distance. I face him, tell him I'm done being afraid, and offer him a choice. Walk away and never contact me again, or I expose every illegal thing he's ever done to the authorities. Lena's voice steadied. Marco's team can dig up enough to put him away for decades, but I want to be the one who gives him the ultimatum. I want him to see that I'm not the scared little girl he used to terrorize. And if he chooses violence instead of walking away? Then your security intervenes. Then you get to be the dangerous man who protects what's his. Lena closed the distance between them, pressing her palms against his chest. But let me try first. Let me prove to myself and to him that I'm not powerless anymore. Adrian's jaw worked as he fought with himself, control warring with the desperate need to lock her away somewhere safe. Finally, he pulled her against him, burying his face in her hair. If anything happens to you, if he so much as touches you, there won't be enough of him left to identify. His voice was muffled but absolute. You understand that? Whatever mercy you're offering him doesn't extend to me. He hurts you. He dies. I understand. Lena tilted her face up to kiss him. But he won't. Because I'm stronger than he ever gave me credit for. And because I'll have you watching my back. Adrian held her like that for long minutes, his heart hammering against her cheek. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. You're the bravest person I've ever known, and the most terrifying. And I love you so much it makes me stupid and reckless and willing to let you walk into danger because you asked me to trust you. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. But Lena, if this goes wrong, if he hurts you, then you burn his world down, I know. She kissed him again. Now help me plan how to end this without bloodshed. They chose a coffee shop in a busy shopping district, public enough that Robert couldn't try anything violent, controlled enough that Adrian's security could monitor every entrance. Lena wore jeans and a simple sweater, wanting to look normal, unthreatening. Not the woman in designer gowns kissing Adrian DeLuca, just Lena Carter, facing her past. Adrian had wanted to be there himself, but Lena had refused. Robert would never talk honestly if he thought he was being intimidated by the DeLuca name. This had to be just the two of them, or at least appear that way. In reality, Victor and 3 other security personnel watched from strategic positions, concealed weapons and earpieces connecting them to Marco's command center. Lena sat at a corner table, coffee growing cold in front of her, and waited. Robert Hayes walked in 20 minutes late, exactly as she'd expected. Prison had aged him, more gray in his hair, new lines around his mouth, a hardness in his eyes that spoke of violence endured and violence planned. He spotted her immediately, a cruel smile spreading across his face as he approached. "There's my girl." He dropped into the chair across from her without invitation. "Looking real good, Lena. That rich boyfriend's money treating you well?" Lena forced herself not to flinch at his proximity, at the familiar smell of cheap cigarettes and stale beer. "I'm not your girl. I stopped being yours the day I turned 18 and you lost legal guardianship." "Legal?" Robert laughed. "Like legality ever mattered in our family. Your mama sure didn't worry about it when she married me 6 months after your daddy died. Didn't worry about it when she drank herself to death and left you with me. My mother was grieving and made bad choices. That doesn't give you ownership of me." Lena's hands stayed steady on the table, visible, non-threatening. "I asked you here to make something clear. I'm done running from you, done being afraid, done letting you dictate my life." Robert's expression darkened. "You think hooking yourself to some crime lord makes you untouchable? I've dealt with scarier men than Adrian DeLuca in prison, sweetheart. He doesn't frighten me." "He should, but that's not the point." Lena leaned forward slightly. "The point is I'm offering you a choice. Walk away. Leave Las Vegas. Leave me alone. Pretend I don't exist. And I'll make sure you have enough money to start over somewhere else. $20,000. Enough for first month's rent, a used car, a fresh start." Greed flickered in Robert's eyes before suspicion replaced it. "And what do you want in return?" "For you to disappear from my life. Permanently. No contact, no threats, no showing up to demand more money. You take this offer and we never speak again." Lena pulled an envelope from her purse, setting it on the table between them. "Or you refuse, keep threatening me, and I give everything I know about your illegal activities to the district attorney. Every stolen car you fenced, every underground fight you fixed, every penny of welfare fraud. I kept records, Robert. All those years you thought I was just quiet little Lena who didn't pay attention. I was documenting everything." The envelope was a bluff. She had some documentation, but nothing comprehensive enough to guarantee prosecution. But Robert didn't know that, and the fear that flickered across his face suggested he was imagining exactly which crimes she might have proof of. "You're bluffing." "Try me." Lena's voice was steady, certain. "Take the money and walk away, or roll the dice on whether I'm telling the truth. But understand, if you choose wrong, if you come after me or try to hurt me, you'll face more than just the police. Adrian DeLuca doesn't forgive threats to people he loves. And I am loved, Robert. Protected. Valued. Everything you told me I'd never be." She watched him process the offer. Greed warring with pride, warring with the uncertainty of not knowing what evidence she actually possessed. Robert Hayes was a bully and a coward. He'd only ever hurt her because she couldn't fight back. Now faced with real consequences, she could see him calculating odds. 30,000. His counteroffer came quick, desperate. 30,000 and I'm gone. You'll never see me again. Lena wanted to refuse, to stick to her original number, but she could see the truth in his eyes. This was his exit offer, the price of her freedom. Fine. 30,000. But you leave today, right now. You take this envelope, go pack whatever you own, and you're on a bus out of Nevada before midnight. She pushed the envelope closer. There's 5,000 in here. The rest will be wired to an account Marco set up. Untraceable to me, accessible only with a PIN. I'll text you once you're across state lines. It was more than Robert deserved. more than he'd earned. But it was also the price of ending this without bloodshed, without Adrian having to add another body to his conscience. Robert grabbed the envelope, counted the cash inside with practiced fingers. When he looked up, something almost like respect flickered in his expression. "You really did grow up, didn't you? Not the scared little girl anymore." "No, I'm not." Lena stood, leaving her untouched coffee behind. "Goodbye, Robert. I hope you find whatever you're looking for, but find it far away from me." She walked out of the coffee shop with her head high, feeling Victor's presence a reassuring shadow behind her. She didn't look back, didn't give Robert the satisfaction of seeing if she was checking whether he'd follow. Outside, Adrian's town car waited at the curb. The moment she slid inside, Adrian pulled her into his arms, his whole body shaking with relief and residual fear. "It's done." Lena's voice was steady despite the adrenaline crash making her hands tremble. "He took the money. He's leaving. Marco's team is tracking him to the bus station. If he deviates from the plan, if he tries to come back..." Adrian didn't finish the threat. Didn't need to. He won't. He's a coward who only hits when he knows he'll win, and today he realized he can't win against me anymore. Lena pulled back enough to meet Adrian's eyes. "I did it. I faced my monster, and I won." Pride and love and fierce possessiveness warred in Adrian's expression. "You're incredible, brave and brilliant and absolutely terrifying." He kissed her until neither of them could breathe. "But if you ever scare me like that again, I'm locking you in the estate and throwing away the key." "You wouldn't. Try me." They were still arguing about it when Lena's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She opened it, ice flooding her veins as she read. "Enjoy your victory, little writer. But understand, you're playing in my world now. And in my world, women who steal what's mine don't get happy endings. The real story is just beginning. EV." Attached was a screenshot of Lena's story, the one she'd published under a pen name, with a note. "Recognized yourself yet? I wonder how many other readers will when I point them in the right direction." Adrian read over her shoulder, his expression darkening to something murderous. "She knows. Elena knows you're L.M. Carter, and she's threatening to expose me." Lena's mind raced. "If she reveals my identity, connects the story to our real relationship, then your privacy disappears. Your safety disappears. Every detail of your life becomes public consumption." Adrian's hands fisted. "She wants to destroy you for taking me from her." Lena stared at the threatening message, feeling the walls closing in. She'd thought facing Robert was the end of her battles. Instead, it was just the beginning. But then she thought about the woman in her story, the protagonist who'd refused to be small, who'd claimed her voice and her power. The woman readers connected with because she felt real. A slow smile spread across Lena's face. "Then let her expose me." Lena's voice was steady, certain. "Let her tell the world who I am. Because if my story is going viral anyway, if people are already falling in love with these characters, maybe it's time they met the real woman behind the words." Adrian stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "You want to reveal yourself? After everything we've done to protect your identity?" "I want to take control of my own narrative." Lena pulled up her author account, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Elena thinks she can use my story as a weapon. But what if I use it as a shield? What if I own who I am, stand up in front of everyone and say, yes, this is my story, this is my truth, and I'm not ashamed of it?" "Lena, trust me." She met his eyes, seeing her own fierce determination reflected back. "The way I trusted you to let me face Robert, trust that I know how to fight this battle." Adrian was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Then fight. And when Elena Volkov retaliates, because she will, I'll be right beside you, burning down anyone who tries to hurt you." Lena began typing, her fingers flying across the screen as she crafted the message that would change everything. "To my readers, you've asked who L.M. Carter is, whether my story is based on truth. I'm here to answer those questions. My name is Lena Carter. I'm 24 years old, and the romance you've been reading, the story of a broken man learning to love and an invisible woman claiming her power, is mine. Every word of it. This is my truth, my choice, my voice, and I'm not hiding anymore." She hit publish and watched the message go live, setting in motion events that would either cement her place in Adrian's world or destroy them both. But for the first time since Robert Hayes had called threatening her life, Lena felt something other than fear. She felt ready, The response was instantaneous and overwhelming. Within an hour of Lena's revelation, her story exploded across every social media platform. Readers who'd been captivated by the fictional romance now devoured the real-life drama behind it. News outlets picked up the story. Mystery author reveals identity. I'm living my own romance. Lifestyle bloggers dissected every detail of her relationship with Adrian, and the comment sections filled with thousands of voices. Some supportive, others vicious, all of them demanding more. Lena sat in Adrian's study, watching her phone light up with notifications until it became meaningless noise. Sophia had stopped bringing her the physical mail after the first 100 letters arrived. Marco had assigned 2 additional staff members just to filter death threats from fan mail. "You're trending #1 worldwide," Adrian said from behind his desk, his own laptop open to a dozen tabs monitoring the fallout. Above political scandals, celebrity breakups, and a royal wedding announcement. "Is that good or bad?" Lena's voice came out smaller than she intended. "Depends on your definition." Adrian closed his laptop and moved to sit beside her on the leather sofa. "You wanted control of your narrative. You have it. Every major publisher in New York is fighting to offer you a book deal. You've gained 200,000 followers since this morning. Your story has been read over 5 million times in the past week. But Elena Volkov has also been giving interviews, painting you as a gold digger who fabricated a romance to justify stealing me from her. Dimitri's legal team is exploring defamation options. And my mother..." Adrian's jaw tightened. "My mother called you a vulgar opportunist exploiting private matters for public gain." Each revelation landed like a physical blow. Lena had known there would be backlash, had prepared herself for criticism and judgment, but hearing Adrian's own mother condemn her made something crack inside her chest. Maybe she's right. Lena's hands twisted together in her lap. Maybe I am exploiting what we have, using our relationship to launch a career. Stop. Adrian's fingers caught her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. You wrote a story about transformation and choosing love over safety. About a woman finding her voice and a man learning to feel again. The fact that it's based on our lives doesn't make it exploitation. It makes it true, real. The kind of truth people are desperate to find in a world full of carefully curated lies. Your family hates me. The Volkovs want to destroy me. Half the internet thinks I'm a scheming, and the other half thinks you're brave and honest and exactly what I needed. Adrian's thumb stroked her cheekbone. Do you know what I read in the comments this morning? Hundreds of women saying your story gave them courage to leave abusive relationships, to stand up to men who made them feel small, to choose the dangerous, complicated love instead of the safe, empty alternative. His voice roughened. You're changing lives, Lena. Don't let the people who hate that take it away from you. Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to focus on the positive responses instead of the vitriol, but the weight of public scrutiny pressed against her shoulders like a physical thing. I'm scared, she whispered. I thought I was ready for this, but Adrian, they're picking apart every detail of my life. They found photos of my old apartment. Someone tracked down my former boss at the convenience store and got her to talk about how desperate I was for money. They're painting me as pathetic. You were never pathetic. You were surviving. Adrian pulled her into his lap, wrapping his arms around her like he could shield her from the world's judgment. And now you're thriving. Let them see that transformation. Let them watch you rise. A sharp knock interrupted them. Marco entered without waiting for permission, his expression grim. We have a situation. Elena Volkov just posted a video to her social media. 3 million views in 20 minutes and climbing. Adrian's whole body went rigid. Show me. Marco pulled out his tablet, queuing up the video. Elena Volkov appeared on screen, perfectly styled, sitting in what looked like a professionally lit interview setup. Her expression was wounded, vulnerable, a masterclass in calculated sympathy. I want to address the rumors surrounding Adrian DeLuca and Lena Carter, Elena began, her voice soft and pained. For those who don't know, Adrian and I have been in a relationship for 2 years. We were planning our future together, marriage, family, building something meaningful. Until Miss Carter arrived. Lena's stomach dropped. That's a lie. Adrian said you weren't together. Watch, Adrian said tightly. Elena continued, dabbing at her eyes with practiced precision. I understand the appeal of their story. A powerful man, a struggling woman, a fairy tale romance. It's compelling fiction, but that's all it is. Fiction. The truth is that Miss Carter targeted Adrian deliberately. She researched his vulnerabilities, identified his isolation, and positioned herself as the solution to problems he didn't know he had. This is insane, Lena breathed. She wrote a story making herself the hero of a romance that never existed, Elena went on. She's fabricated intimacy, invented connection, all to justify inserting herself into a world where she doesn't belong. And now she's profiting from it while destroying real relationships in the process. Elena's expression hardened. I'm not saying this out of jealousy. I'm saying it because women like Lena Carter are dangerous. They prey on successful men, exploit their weaknesses, and leave devastation in their wake. Adrian is a victim here, even if he doesn't realize it yet. The video ended. Silence filled the study like poison gas. She's accusing you of being a predator, Marco said flatly, of manipulating Adrian for money and status. The comments are already turning. People who supported you an hour ago are now questioning everything. Lena felt sick. How do we fight this? How do I prove that's not what happened? You can't prove a negative, Adrian said, his voice cold with fury. That's exactly why she chose this angle. There's no way to prove you didn't target me, didn't research my vulnerabilities, didn't deliberately position yourself. His hands fisted. She's playing on every stereotype about women and wealthy men, making people doubt your intentions. Then what do we do? Adrian was silent for a long moment, his expression calculating. When he finally spoke, his voice held the cold precision of a man planning war. We give them a story they can't refute, one that makes Elena's narrative impossible to maintain. He looked at Marco. How fast can you arrange a press conference? Real media, not just social media. Major networks, legitimate journalists. 24 hours if I call in favors, 48 to do it properly. Do it properly. I want this airtight. Adrian turned to Lena. Are you ready to tell the whole truth? Everything. Your past with Robert Hayes, why you needed the job, how we actually met. You want me to admit I was desperate? That I took your offer because I had no other options? Lena's voice climbed. That just proves Elena's point, that I'm an opportunist who... It proves you're human. That you were in an impossible situation and made the best choice available. Adrian's hands framed her face. People don't connect with perfect fairy tales, Lena. They connect with messy, complicated truth. So we give them truth, raw and honest and impossible to deny. Lena thought about the woman in her story, the protagonist who'd stopped hiding and claimed her voice. That woman wouldn't cower in the face of Elena Volkov's lies. She'd stand up and fight back. Okay, Lena's voice steadied. Let's do it. Let's tell them everything. The press conference was scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m., held in the grand ballroom of one of the DeLuca hotels. Media credentials were verified, questions pre-screened, security tighter than a presidential visit. Lena spent the 48 hours before it preparing, rehearsing answers with Adrian, reviewing talking points with Marco, trying not to vomit from anxiety. The morning of the conference, she woke to Adrian's arms around her and his voice low against her ear. Whatever happens today, whatever they ask or accuse, remember that I chose you, that I love you, that nothing Elena Volkov says can change that. Lena turned in his embrace, studying his face in the early light. What if this makes things worse? What if people don't believe us? Then we'll deal with it together. Adrian kissed her softly. But Lena, I have a feeling they're going to believe every word, because the truth has a weight that lies can never match. She wanted to share his confidence. Instead, she felt like she was walking toward execution. The ballroom filled quickly. Reporters from every major outlet, cameras positioned for optimal angles, the low hum of speculation filling the air like electricity. Lena sat beside Adrian at a table facing the crowd, acutely aware of every eye judging her appearance, her posture, her right to be there. Marco stepped to the microphone first, establishing ground rules and introducing Adrian. When Adrian stood, the room went silent, the kind of silence that came from recognizing real power. Thank you all for coming. Adrian's voice carried authority even through the microphone. I'm here today to address the rumors and accusations surrounding my relationship with Lena Carter. There's been a lot of speculation, a lot of false narratives, and one particularly damaging lie I need to correct immediately. He paused, letting the tension build. Elena Volkov claims we were in a relationship for 2 years, that we were planning marriage and a future together. That is categorically false. Adrian's dark eyes swept the room. Elena and I have never been in a romantic relationship. Her family and mine hoped for a strategic alliance. Our parents arranged dinners, public appearances, opportunities for us to develop feelings. But I was clear from the beginning that I had no interest in pursuing anything beyond professional courtesy. Hands shot up across the room. Adrian ignored them, continuing. 3 years ago, I was in an accident that left me with significant trauma, physical and psychological. For 3 years, I believed I was incapable of forming genuine emotional connections. I accepted that my life would be defined by business arrangements and strategic partnerships rather than real feeling. His hand found Lena's, pulling her to stand beside him. Until I met Lena Carter, the woman who made me feel something other than nothing for the first time in years. Lena's heart hammered as camera flashes exploded across the room. Adrian's hand squeezed hers, grounding her. Lena didn't target me. She didn't research my vulnerabilities or position herself strategically. She was a cocktail waitress trying to escape an abusive stepfather, working 3 jobs to save enough money to disappear. I offered her a position managing my estate because I saw someone drowning who deserved a life raft. What happened after that? The connection we developed, the relationship that grew, was as unexpected to me as it was to her. Adrian turned to face Lena directly, speaking to her rather than the cameras. You didn't exploit my weaknesses. You made them irrelevant. You didn't fabricate intimacy. You created it by being honest and brave and refusing to let me hide behind emotional walls. Everything in your story is true because it's our story. And I'm not a victim of your manipulation. I'm a man who finally figured out what it means to be alive. Tears burned in Lena's eyes. She blinked them back, refusing to cry on camera, but Adrian's thumb brushed her cheek where one had escaped. Now Lena is going to tell you her side, and I'm asking you to listen, really listen, to what she has to say. Because the woman standing beside me isn't a gold digger or an opportunist. She's a survivor who found her voice and used it to create something beautiful. She deserves your respect, not your judgment. He stepped back, yielding the microphone to Lena. She stared at the sea of faces, at the cameras recording every micro-expression, at the reporters poised to dissect every word. Then she thought about every woman who'd commented on her story, saying it gave them courage. Every reader who'd found hope in her words. Every person who'd connected with her truth. She took a breath and began. My name is Lena Marie Carter. I'm 24 years old. Until 6 weeks ago, I was invisible. The kind of person you look past, look through, forget the moment I leave a room. Her voice shook but held. I was raised by an abusive stepfather who told me I was worthless, that I'd never amount to anything, that I should be grateful anyone tolerated my existence. The room was absolutely silent. When I met Adrian DeLuca, I was desperate, drowning in debt, counting down days until my stepfather got out of prison, working myself to exhaustion because I had no other options. He offered me a job and safety, not because he wanted something from me, but because he saw someone who needed help. Lena's hand steadied on the podium. I didn't plan to fall in love with him, didn't strategize or manipulate or position myself. I just existed near him. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. She looked directly into the nearest camera, speaking to everyone watching. I wrote our story because I needed to process what was happening. Because writing has always been how I make sense of the world. I published it because I wanted other women to know that transformation is possible, that you can go from invisible to valued, from afraid to empowered, from surviving to thriving. Her voice strengthened. Elena Volkov says I'm dangerous, that I prey on successful men and exploit their weaknesses. But the truth is simpler and less dramatic. I'm just a woman who found love in an unexpected place and had the courage to claim it. Lena took a breath, steadying herself for what came next. 6 weeks ago, I had $247 to my name. No assets, no safety net, no future beyond the next bus schedule. Today, I have a book deal worth 7 figures, a story that's been read by millions, and a relationship with a man who makes me feel seen and valued and capable of anything. She met Adrian's eyes across the space between them. Elena wants you to believe I fabricated all of this for personal gain, but I ask you, what kind of person gives up anonymity, privacy, and peace for money? What kind of person invites the world to dissect their relationship, their past, their every choice? She paused, letting the question hang. The answer is someone who believes their story matters. Someone who thinks the truth is worth fighting for, even when it's messy and complicated and makes you vulnerable to attack. Lena's voice dropped. intimate despite the crowd. I'm not perfect. I made choices out of desperation that I'm not proud of. I let fear control me for years. But I'm done apologizing for surviving, done hiding who I am to make other people comfortable. I wrote my truth, I'm living my truth, and if that makes me dangerous, then I'll wear that label with pride. The room erupted with questions, reporters shouting over each other. Marco stepped forward to moderate, but Lena held up her hand. I'll take 3 questions. Choose carefully. A woman from a major news network stood first. Miss Carter, can you prove that Mr. DeLuca wasn't in a relationship with Elena Volkov as she claims? I can't prove a negative, Lena said calmly, but I can tell you that in 6 weeks of living in Adrian's home, managing his schedule, coordinating his life, I've never seen evidence of a romantic relationship with Elena. No personal photos, no intimate calls, no behavior suggesting anything beyond business courtesy. She glanced at Adrian. But more importantly, you'd have to ask yourself, why would a man in a committed relationship kiss another woman in front of 500 witnesses? Why risk his reputation, his business alliances, his family's approval for someone who meant nothing? The second question came from a tabloid journalist. How do you respond to accusations that you're a gold digger who targeted Mr. DeLuca for his money? I respond by pointing out the timeline, Lena said. I published my story under a pen name before I revealed my identity. I could have remained anonymous, collected royalties, built my career without ever connecting it to Adrian. But I chose to be public because the story mattered more than the money. She smiled slightly. Gold diggers hide their intentions. I made mine impossible to ignore. The third question came from a young reporter in the back. What do you want people to take away from your story? Lena considered the question carefully. I want people to know that transformation is possible, that you're not defined by your worst circumstances or your biggest fears, that choosing love, real, complicated, messy love, is always braver than choosing safety. Her voice softened. And I want every woman who feels invisible to know that you matter. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. The press conference dissolved into chaos after that. Reporters shouting follow-up questions, cameras tracking Adrian and Lena as they left the stage, speculation already spinning into headlines. But Lena barely heard it. She was too focused on Adrian's hand in hers, his body a solid wall of protection as security cleared their path. They made it to the car before Lena's composure cracked. She collapsed against Adrian's chest, shaking with the aftermath of adrenaline and exposure. I can't believe I just did that. Can't believe I stood in front of the world and you were perfect. Adrian's arms tightened around her, brave and honest, and everything they needed to hear. Elena won't let this go. She'll find another angle, another way to... Let her try. Adrian's voice hardened. She played her best card and you countered it. Now everyone's watching. If she comes after you again, she'll look petty and vindictive instead of wounded. Lena wanted to believe him. But she knew women like Elena Volkov didn't surrender just because they'd lost one battle. The retaliation came that night, swift and vicious. Lena was working in her apartment trying to focus on edits for her upcoming book release when her phone exploded with notifications. She opened social media to find her name trending again. But this time, the context made her blood run cold. Someone had leaked her medical records, photos of therapy intake forms from when she was 16, documenting sessions about her stepfather's abuse, prescription history showing antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication, even a hospitalization from age 17 when she'd been treated for injuries Robert Hayes had inflicted. Her most private pain, exposed for public consumption. The accompanying post from an anonymous account painted her as mentally unstable. Is this the woman we're celebrating? Someone with a documented history of psychological problems? Maybe her love story is really a symptom of untreated mental illness. Maybe Adrian DeLuca should be concerned about who he's really involved with. Lena stared at the screen, feeling violated in a way that went beyond words. These were her darkest moments, her most vulnerable admissions, stripped of context and weaponized against her. Her hands shook so badly she dropped the phone. Adrian found her 20 minutes later, curled on the bathroom floor, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. He gathered her into his arms without a word, holding her while she shattered. They know everything, she finally gasped. Every terrible thing about me, every moment of weakness. They're going to use it to destroy me. No. Adrian's voice was absolute. They're going to learn exactly what happens when someone violates the privacy of the woman I love. He made 3 phone calls. each one short and devastating in its precision. The first to his legal team, instructing them to file immediate lawsuits against every outlet that published the leaked records. The second to Marco, ordering an investigation into how the records were obtained and who was responsible. The third to someone Lena didn't recognize, a voice that answered with Director Campbell and listened while Adrian explained what had happened. "I'm calling in the favor you owe me," Adrian said coldly. "I want a federal investigation, HIPAA violations, illegal acquisition of protected health information, harassment. I want whoever did this buried so deep they never see daylight again." When he finished, he turned back to Lena with an expression that promised violence. Elena Volkov crossed a line. She went from attacking your character to violating federal law, and she's going to regret it. "How do you know it was her?" Lena's voice was raw from crying. "Because it's exactly what she'd do when everything else failed. She can't fight your truth, so she's trying to make you look unstable. Make people question your version of events." Adrian's jaw was tight enough to crack. But she miscalculated, because now instead of looking like a victim, she looks like a criminal, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. The investigation moved with terrifying speed. Within 48 hours, Marco's team traced the leak to a private investigator Elena Volkov had hired. Within 72 hours, the FBI filed federal charges. Within a week, Elena herself was facing criminal prosecution for conspiracy to violate privacy laws. The public response was swift and brutal. The same people who'd questioned Lena's story now rallied to her defense. Articles condemned the violation of her medical privacy. Advocacy groups for abuse survivors took up her cause, and Elena Volkov's carefully curated image crumbled under the weight of her own vindictiveness. "She's trying to make a deal," Marco reported during a security briefing. "Her lawyers approached the DA's office this morning. She'll plead guilty to reduce charges and drop all claims about you and Adrian in exchange for avoiding jail time." Lena looked at Adrian, waiting for his reaction. His expression was carved from stone. "What does Lena want?" Adrian asked quietly. Everyone in the room turned to look at her. Lena thought about Elena's threats, her lies, the violation of her most private pain. Thought about the woman who'd tried to destroy her out of nothing more than jealousy and wounded pride. "I want a public apology," Lena said finally. "Recorded statement admitting she lied about Adrian and me, admitting she orchestrated the leak, taking full responsibility for her actions." She met Marco's eyes. "And I want her to donate $1 million to organizations supporting abuse survivors. Let her money do some good since her words only caused harm." Marco's eyebrows rose. "That's generous, considering—" "It's strategic," Adrian corrected, pride clear in his voice. "An apology makes Lena look magnanimous. The donation turns Elena's attack into funding for a good cause. And a recorded admission destroys any remaining credibility Elena might have had." He looked at Lena. "You're learning to play the game." "I'm learning that revenge isn't as satisfying as turning your enemy's weapon into your shield," Lena replied. "Elena wanted to make me look unstable. Instead, she made me look like a survivor worth protecting. I'll take that win." Elena's apology went live 3 days later, a carefully scripted statement delivered with barely concealed fury. But the words were clear. She'd fabricated claims about her relationship with Adrian, had orchestrated the illegal leak of Lena's records, and took full responsibility for her actions. The donation to abuse survivor organizations was verified. The federal charges were reduced to misdemeanors. And Elena Volkov disappeared from public life, her reputation in ruins. "It's over," Adrian said, watching the apology video for the third time. "Elena's finished. Robert Hayes is gone. Your story is a bestseller, and you're untouchable now, too visible, too beloved, too important to harm without massive consequences." "So why don't I feel relieved?" Lena stared at the screen, feeling hollow instead of victorious. "Because you're human. Because winning a war doesn't erase the battles you fought to get there." Adrian pulled her into his arms. "But Lena, you won. Against every odd, every threat, every person who tried to make you small, you won. That's not nothing." It wasn't nothing, but it also wasn't everything. Lena spent the next week in a strange fog, handling interview requests, finalizing her book deal, watching her follower count climb past 1 million. Everyone wanted a piece of her story, wanted to know what came next, wanted to be part of the fairy tale. But fairy tales didn't include the nightmares that still woke her at 3 a.m., didn't include the anxiety that spiked every time she saw an unknown number, didn't include the complicated grief of knowing she'd won by becoming exactly the kind of public figure she'd never wanted to be. She was sitting in Adrian's study late one night, staring at her laptop without seeing it, when he found her. Talk to me. Adrian sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. What's going on in that brilliant head of yours? I'm pregnant. The words fell into silence like stones into water. Lena hadn't meant to say it, hadn't planned this moment or prepared for this conversation. But suddenly the truth was out there, impossible to take back. Adrian went absolutely still. What? I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. I found out this morning and I've been trying to figure out how to tell you and… Lena's voice broke. I know we never discussed this, never planned for it. I'm on birth control, but sometimes it fails. And I don't even know if you want children or if this is terrible timing or… Adrian's mouth crashed against hers, silencing her panic with a kiss that tasted like joy and wonder, and something so pure it made her eyes burn. You're pregnant, he breathed against her lips. With my child. Our child. Are you happy about this? Lena searched his face, looking for any sign of doubt or fear. Happy? Adrian's laugh was shaky. Lena, 6 months ago I thought I was broken beyond repair. Incapable of feeling, of connecting, of building anything real. You proved me wrong about all of it, and now you're telling me we're creating a life together? His hands framed her face with devastating gentleness. I'm not happy. I'm devastated, terrified, overwhelmed with how much I love you and this tiny person we made. Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks. I was so scared you'd think it was too soon, that we weren't ready. We're not ready. We're a mess. You're launching a career that's going to consume you, and I'm running an empire that requires constant attention, and we're both still healing from trauma. Adrian's forehead dropped to hers. But we'll figure it out, together, the way we figured out everything else. Together, Lena whispered, the word feeling like a promise. They sat like that for long minutes, wrapped in each other, in the stunning reality of new life. Then Adrian pulled back, something shifting in his expression. Marry me. Lena's breath caught. What? Marry me. Not because of the baby, or because my family expects it, or because it makes strategic sense. Adrian's dark eyes held hers with absolute certainty. Marry me because I love you. Because you're the only person who's ever made me feel whole. Because I want to spend the rest of my life watching you be brilliant and brave and absolutely terrifying. Adrian, marry me because when I picture my future, you're in every frame, you and our child and whatever other chaos we create together. His voice roughened. Marry me, Lena Carter. Make me the luckiest man in Las Vegas. Lena thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, invisible, afraid, convinced she'd never matter to anyone, thought about everything that had changed, everything she'd fought for, everything she'd become. Yes. The word came out steady and sure. Yes, I'll marry you. Adrian kissed her until they both forgot how to breathe, until the study disappeared and there was nothing but them and the impossible beauty of choosing each other, despite every logical reason not to. When they finally broke apart, Adrian pulled a small box from his desk drawer, the kind of box that held expensive jewelry. Lena's eyes widened. You were planning this. I've been carrying this for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Adrian opened the box to reveal a ring that stole her breath, a single diamond, perfect and simple, set in platinum. I was going to wait until things calmed down, until the Elena situation resolved and your career stabilized and we had time to breathe. But then you told me about the baby, and I realized there's never going to be a perfect moment, just moments we choose to make perfect. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit like it had been made for her. Maybe it had. I love you, Lena whispered, even when you're controlling and overprotective and trying to shield me from the world. I love you, Adrian replied, even when you're stubborn and reckless and refuse to let me protect you the way I want to. They were still laughing when Marco burst into the study without knocking, his phone in hand. Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this. He pulled up a video, turning the screen so they could both watch. It was a news report about a literary gala scheduled for the following month, an exclusive event celebrating breakthrough authors. The anchor was announcing special guests when Lena's author photo appeared on screen. And in a surprise reveal, the mysterious L.M. Carter, whose viral romance captured millions of hearts, will be making her first public appearance as an author. Sources say Carter, whose real identity as Lena Carter was revealed in dramatic fashion last month, has been invited to receive the Breakthrough Author Award at the prestigious Manhattan Literary Gala. The anchor continued, but Lena had stopped listening. A literary gala, in Manhattan, in front of the publishing industry elite. You should go, Adrian said immediately. This is huge, Lena. Recognition from the literary establishment. I can't. I'm pregnant and exhausted, and the thought of standing in front of more cameras. Lena shook her head. I've had enough exposure for one lifetime. Or, Adrian said slowly, you could go and show everyone exactly who Lena Carter is. Not a scandal or a headline, but a legitimate author who deserves recognition. His eyes gleamed. And I could come with you. Make sure everyone knows that the woman they're honoring is mine. You want to go to a literary gala? Lena couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. You hate these things. I hate business galas full of people trying to leverage connections. But a celebration of your achievement? Where I get to watch you receive recognition you've earned? Adrian's smile was fierce. I wouldn't miss it for anything. Marco cleared his throat. There's one more thing. The gala organizers reached out specifically requesting that you attend. Apparently, your story has become required reading in several MFA programs. You're being studied, Lena. Analyzed as an example of authentic voice and emotional truth in contemporary romance. The words felt surreal. 6 months ago, Lena had been a nobody serving drinks to people who looked through her. Now she was being studied in graduate programs, celebrated by the literary establishment, recognized as someone who mattered. I'll go, she decided, but only if Adrian comes with me. I'm done walking into important moments alone. You'll never walk into anything alone again, Adrian promised. Not if I have anything to say about it. The Manhattan Literary Gala took place at the Plaza Hotel, in a ballroom that made even Adrian's family estate look modest. Lena stood in front of the mirror in their suite, staring at the woman reflected back. Elegant in an emerald gown that hid her small baby bump, hair swept into an updo that made her look older and more sophisticated, makeup highlighting features she'd once considered forgettable. You're beautiful, Adrian said from behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders. And terrified. What are you thinking? That I don't belong here. That these are real authors, people who studied craft and paid dues, and didn't just publish a viral story about their own lives. Lena's hands twisted together. What if they see through me? What if I'm just a one-hit wonder who got lucky? Adrian turned her to face him, his expression serious. Do you know how many people read your story and saw themselves in it? How many women found courage in your words? How many lives you've already changed? His thumb brushed her cheekbone. You belong here, Lena. Not because of luck or timing, but because you're talented and brave and you created something that mattered. Own that. Walk into that ballroom like you know your worth. Lena took a breath, steadying herself. Adrian was right. She'd fought too hard to claim her voice to doubt it now. Okay. She squared her shoulders. Let's do this. The ballroom was packed with literary agents, publishers, established authors, and critics, all the people whose opinions shaped the industry. Lena felt their eyes on her the moment she entered, felt the weight of judgment and curiosity and barely concealed skepticism. Then Adrian's hand found the small of her back, and she remembered she wasn't alone. They made their way through the crowd, Adrian's presence deflecting the worst of the stares. People approached to congratulate Lena, to tell her they'd read her story, to express admiration or curiosity or thinly veiled condescension. She handled each interaction with the grace she'd learned from watching Adrian navigate his world, polite but firm, open but guarded, revealing nothing while appearing to share everything. Miss Carter. A woman in her 50s approached, extending her hand. Margaret Richardson, senior editor at Beacon Press. I wanted to tell you personally, your story reminded me why I got into publishing. That raw, emotional honesty is so rare these days. Thank you. Lena shook her hand, genuinely touched. That means a lot, especially coming from someone with your reputation. I hope you're working on a follow-up. Readers are desperate for more. Margaret's eyes gleamed with professional interest. I'd love to discuss publishing possibilities when you're ready. They exchanged business cards and Margaret moved on. Similar conversations followed, editors wanting her next project, agents offering representation, authors expressing admiration or asking for advice. By the time dinner was announced, Lena's head was spinning. You're doing great, Adrian murmured as they found their assigned table. Natural and professional. They love you. Half of them think I'm a fraud who got lucky with a viral story, Lena countered. And the other half recognize real talent when they see it. Focus on them. The dinner conversation flowed around them. Industry gossip, publishing trends, debates about literary merit versus commercial success. Lena found herself drawn into several passionate discussions about the role of personal experience in fiction, the ethics of writing about real people, the line between autobiography and creative narrative. She held her own, articulating thoughts she hadn't realized she had, defending choices she'd made instinctively. And with each exchange, she felt something shift inside her, the imposter syndrome fading, replaced by growing confidence. Then the awards ceremony began. Lena sat through several presentations, watching established authors receive recognition for lifetime achievement and debut novelists claim prizes for exceptional first works. Each speech was eloquent, practiced, perfectly crafted to sound humble while establishing authority. When her category was announced, Lena's heart started hammering. The Breakthrough Author Award recognizes a writer who has captured public imagination with authentic voice and emotional resonance. This year's recipient emerged from obscurity to become one of the most read authors in contemporary romance. Her story sparked conversations about vulnerability, transformation, and the courage required to share personal truth. Please welcome Lena Carter. The room erupted in applause. Lena stood on shaking legs, feeling Adrian's hand squeeze hers once before she had to walk to the stage alone. The spotlight was blinding. The audience was a blur of faces. And the award, a beautiful crystal sculpture, felt impossibly heavy in her hands. Lena approached the microphone, her prepared speech evaporating from her mind. She looked out at the sea of people who'd come to celebrate authors, and suddenly she knew exactly what to say. 6 months ago, I was invisible. The kind of person you look past without seeing. I worked 3 jobs to survive, wrote stories in stolen moments because it was the only thing that made me feel alive, and convinced myself that wanting more was pointless because people like me didn't get fairy tale endings. The room had gone absolutely silent. Then I met someone who saw me, really saw me, who made me believe that I mattered, that my voice mattered, that my story was worth telling. Lena's eyes found Adrian in the crowd. I wrote about our relationship because I needed to process the impossible thing that was happening to me. Going from invisible to valued, from afraid to empowered, from surviving to thriving. She looked back at the audience. Some people say I exploited personal experience for profit, that I fabricated a romance to justify a career. But I hope, that what I actually did was give permission. Permission for other women to share their truths. Permission to write messy, complicated stories about real love instead of sanitized fantasies. Permission to claim your voice, even when people tell you it's not worth hearing. Lena lifted the award. I accept this not just for myself, but for every woman who's ever felt invisible, who's ever been told to be quiet, to be small, to be grateful for whatever scraps of attention she receives. Your stories matter. Your voices matter. You matter. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. She stepped back from the microphone to thunderous applause. Tears burned in her eyes, but she blinked them back, refusing to cry on stage. She'd said what needed saying. Now she could walk off with dignity and tact. Except the standing ovation wouldn't stop. People were on their feet, some of them crying, others smiling with genuine warmth. And at the back of the ballroom, Adrian DeLuca stood tall and proud, his expression holding something that looked like love and admiration and fierce possessiveness combined. Lena made her way back to their table through a gauntlet of congratulations and requests for interviews. She sank into her chair, shaking with adrenaline, and Adrian immediately pulled her close. You were perfect, he said against her hair. Brave and honest and absolutely devastating. Half the room is in love with you now. I only care about one person's opinion. Lena tilted her face up to kiss him, not caring who was watching or what photos would surface tomorrow. Did I do okay? You changed lives tonight, including mine. Adrian's hand settled over her stomach, where their child grew. Our baby is going to have the most extraordinary mother. They stayed through the rest of the ceremony, accepting congratulations and exchanging contact information with industry professionals. But when the formal events ended and the after-party began, they slipped away, back to their suite, away from cameras and crowds, finally alone. What happens now? Lena asked, kicking off her heels with a groan of relief. We go back to Vegas, I write my next book, we prepare for the baby? Eventually. Adrian loosened his bow tie, watching her with an expression that made heat pool in her belly. But first, I'm going to spend the rest of the night reminding you exactly how extraordinary you are. Is that a promise or a threat? Both. Adrian closed the distance between them, his hands sliding up her sides. You stood on that stage and claimed your power in front of everyone who matters. Now I get to worship you in private the way you deserve. Lena's breath caught as Adrian's mouth found her throat, teeth grazing sensitive skin. The baby, is it safe to? Perfectly safe. I researched. His hands found the zipper of her gown, lowering it with agonizing slowness. Now stop thinking and let me show you what it means to be loved by a man who thought he'd never feel anything again. The dress pooled at her feet. Adrian lifted her easily, carrying her to the bed with a gentleness that contradicted the hunger in his eyes. I love you, he said, positioning himself above her. For your courage, your voice, your stubborn refusal to let anyone make you small. He kissed her slowly, thoroughly, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget how much you matter. Lena pulled him down to her, accepting the promise with her body and her heart, and the fierce certainty that together they could face anything. Later, wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets with Adrian's arms around her and their child growing between them, Lena thought about the journey that had brought her here. From invisible waitress to celebrated author, from victim to survivor, from afraid to empowered. What are you thinking? Adrian's voice was rough with exhaustion. That fairy tales don't usually include federal investigations and public scandals and threats from vengeful exes. Lena smiled against his chest. But ours does, and somehow that makes it better. Better how? Because it's real. Messy and complicated and earned through actual battle instead of handed to us by magic. She tilted her face up to meet his eyes. We chose this, Adrian. We chose each other despite every logical reason not to. That's more powerful than any fairy tale. Adrian's hand stroked her hair, his expression soft in the dim light. So what's our ending? Where does the story go from here? Lena thought about the baby growing inside her, about the books she'd write and the life they'd build. Thought about Adrian transforming his business interests into legitimate enterprises, using his power to help instead of harm. Thought about the foundation they discussed starting, supporting abuse survivors, funding creative programs, giving other invisible women the resources to claim their voices. I think, she said slowly, our ending is really just a beginning, the start of something bigger than either of us alone. She pressed her palm against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. The man who felt nothing learned to feel everything. The invisible woman became impossible to ignore, and together they built a life worth fighting for. I like that ending. Adrian kissed her forehead, though I prefer to think of it as our story, not an ending at all. Just the next chapter? Just the next chapter, he agreed, with many more to come. 6 months later, Lena stood in a private hospital room, holding their daughter, Sophia Grace DeLuca, named for the woman who'd welcomed her when she'd had nothing, and the grace that had transformed both their lives. Adrian sat beside her, one finger caught in their daughter's tiny fist, his expression holding more emotion than she'd ever seen him display. She's perfect, he whispered. Absolutely perfect. She has your eyes, Lena observed, and hopefully my ability to sleep through chaos because she's going to need it growing up in this family. Adrian laughed, the sound rich with joy. Our family. The one we built from broken pieces and impossible choices. Lena looked at the man she'd married in a quiet ceremony surrounded by people who actually mattered. Not society connections or business associates, but real friends and the family members who'd chosen to support them. Looked at the daughter they'd created against all odds. Looked at the future stretching before them, full of possibility and promise. You know what the best part is? She asked. What? I'm not invisible anymore, and neither are you. Lena shifted so Adrian could sit beside her on the bed, all three of them wrapped together. We made each other seen, made each other real, made each other whole. Adrian pressed his lips to her temple, his arms encircling both his girls. You made me whole, Lena. Everything else was just details. Important details. Like the part where I'm a best-selling author, you're slowly transforming your empire into legitimate businesses, and we're starting a foundation to help abuse survivors find their voices. Details, Adrian repeated, smiling. The important part is this, us. This family we created by choosing love over logic. Their daughter made a small sound, not quite a cry, more like a declaration of existence. Lena looked down at the tiny person who represented everything they'd overcome, everything they'd built, everything they'd become. Welcome to the world, Sophia Grace, she whispered. Your parents have quite a story to tell you about danger and transformation and the kind of love that breaks you open and puts you back together stronger than before. Should we start with the part where I kissed your mother in front of 500 people? Adrian asked their daughter, who was already falling asleep against Lena's chest. Or the part where I faced down my worst nightmare with nothing but words and courage? Lena countered. How about we start with the truth? Adrian's hand covered Lena's where it rested on their daughter's back. That sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the right one. That real love requires real courage. And that the woman you should fear most is the one who's decided to stop being afraid. Lena leaned into him, feeling the weight of their daughter, the warmth of Adrian's body, the stunning reality of having everything she'd never dared to want. I love you, she said simply. For seeing me. For choosing me. For making me believe I deserve to be chosen. I love you, Adrian replied. For teaching me to feel. For refusing to let me hide. For being brave enough to walk into my world and make it ours. They sat like that as the sun set over Las Vegas, the city of sin and second chances, of broken dreams and impossible transformations. Three people who'd found each other against all odds and built something worth fighting for. The story that had started with a collision in a dark alley, with a desperate woman and a broken man, had transformed into something neither of them could have predicted. Not a fairy tale. Fairy tales were too simple, too clean, too divorced from the messy reality of actual human connection. This was better. This was real. And in the end, Lena Carter, the woman who'd been invisible, who'd been afraid, who'd been convinced she'd never matter, had created exactly the kind of story worth telling. The kind where the heroine saves herself, claims her power, and chooses dangerous love over safe emptiness. The kind where both people transform, both people grow, both people discover that being broken isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning of becoming whole. The kind where happily ever after isn't given. It's earned, fought for, claimed with courage and conviction and the stubborn refusal to settle for less than everything. And as Lena looked at her husband and daughter, at the life they'd built from ashes and impossible choices, she knew with absolute certainty that every battle, every threat, every moment of terror had been worth it. Because in the end, love, real, complicated, dangerous love, was always worth fighting for. Always.